A young girl is desperate because of the sudden disappearance of a huge sum of money. She is confused and trying to understand what happened. 2 years ago, he reflected on a strange episode when, instead of a comforting dream, he saw something heavy and sad. The morning begins with the subway packed with people. She struggles into the car, mentally resentful of her obligatory daily commute. In the midst of the overwhelming crowd, she reflects that in such conditions it is impossible to even justify rudeness, feeling crammed like a biozi. Finally, as she steps out of the carriage, the woman sighs with relief. Her gaze betrays tiredness and thoughts of how much she wants to quit work. She accidentally finds a forgotten lottery ticket in his pocket. This awakens in her a slight hope for change and a new opportunity. The woman thinks that winning the lottery will be her ticket to freedom, an escape from routine and hard work. She remembers with disgust the boss who does not even pay overtime and the constant complaints of her colleague. Her thoughts also turn to the accountant, who constantly humiliates her with his questions, questioning her right to small pleasures. Having decided to test fate, the woman comes to the conclusion, if the lottery does not bring her success, she will have to relive the day again in this endless cycle of routine. The girl looks at the phone screen where the app is displaying the matches. Her heart starts beating faster and faster. She can't believe what she sees. Surprise gives way to delight. There were many more coincidences than she expected. Perhaps this is the sign she was looking for. Gray appears in the crowd and his gaze scans her. He appears calm, but inside him a spark of interest lights up, as if he senses an important moment. The app confirms it. The amount of winnings is incredible. The girl realizes that this is her chance, as if fate were opening doors for her. A determination lights up in her eyes. She understands that this is not just a coincidence, but an opportunity to change her life once and for all. She whispers to herself that she might be going crazy, but inside she feels confident. There is no retreat, a new chapter awaits her. Her thoughts are confused. She imagines how her life could change. Maybe it's not just luck, but a new dream path. As she opens the luminous door, she feels the light flooding her consciousness. She is ready to move forward, leaving all fears behind. In the new place, Soleya meets her. She is the embodiment of lightness and confidence, and their meeting seems predetermined. Gray asks a question with a smile that could confuse the girl, but his gaze is full of respect, and his words evoke hidden support. Soleya, a red-haired girl, faced a misunderstanding from a man who made critical comments about her sister. She remained calm but cautious. Embarrassed to be in the room, Soleya mentally scolded the man for his abruptness. However, she tried to explain her presence. Having mistakenly entered the wrong door, Soleya felt embarrassed. She apologized, feeling out of place in that environment, but decided to keep her composure. Looking at her dress and shoes, Soleya wondered about the reality of what was happening. Everything around her seemed strange, as if it were a dream. An older man appeared in the room, offering help. His kindness reassured Soleya, but her wariness did not disappear. The maid took Soleya by the hand and offered to accompany her. Confused, she let herself be dragged along and continued trying to make sense of the situation. As she mentally reflected on the man she had met before, Soleya remembered that she had never met anyone like him in the company. The beauty of the room she was led to enchanted Soleya. However, she continued to wonder where she was and what it all meant. Soleya was surprised to hear Korean spoken and wondered how that was possible. Her thoughts were filled with doubt and surprise. The maid, introducing herself as Anne, helped Soleya feel more secure. They continued their conversation, trying to understand each other. The maids panic and report that Soleya, despite feeling unwell, suddenly left the bed and ran away somewhere. This is alarming. Soleya looks around in surprise, not understanding where she is. Her confusion increases as she tries to figure out who Soleya is. The maids are horrified and assume that Soleya is beginning to lose her memory. One of them nearly passes out from fear, and the other cries out for order. The girl ponders the appearance of those around her, finding their features too unusual. She also realizes that she speaks Korean. The maids beg Soleya to stop and see a doctor immediately. Soleya is outraged because she thinks her hair is a wig and tries to prove it. While trying to remove the wig, Soleya suddenly realizes that the hair is real. Her astonishment only increases the maid's fear. One of the maids, frightened by Soleil's actions, claims that an evil spirit has entered the girl's right hand, frightening the others. The servants report that Soleil does not remember anything, and they attribute this to the influence of an evil spirit. They are sure that the spirit tried to tear out her hair. Lying on her bed, Soleil accuses her hands of not obeying her. She defiantly decides to repeat her actions, demonstrating her firmness. A mysterious man asks a girl to state her name. Soleil confidently replies that she is Yoon Ji-yeon and that she will always remain herself. A strange light appears in the room, and Soleil's father becomes concerned about her condition. Gray casually explains that she fainted again. Gray says irritably that Soleil always calls attention to herself at important moments, as if deliberately demanding special treatment. Soleil regains consciousness and mockingly muses that Gray learned manners in the air. His condition remains a mystery. The counselor whispers something to Soleil's father. It's clear that he's worried about her condition, but the older man remains confident. Soleil feels like she has lost her memory. She begins to remember that she missed something important, but she can't figure out what exactly. She finally remembers winning the lottery. She is overcome with panic over the missing money and desperately tries to understand what is happening. In fear, she screams that the money is gone. Her thoughts become confused. She imagines the worst scenarios and becomes hysterical. She desperately screams for money, loses her composure, and focuses entirely on the lost profits. Those around her try to calm her down. Soleil panics and tries to escape, claiming she needs to get home. Her actions cause chaos and unrest for everyone around her. The father, Gray, and the others try to stop her so that she understands the reason for her condition. The situation remains tense. Soleil tries to influence the magical space using her power. She feels her mind momentarily frozen and energy envelops her hands. After this, she opens her eyes and finds herself in a narrow room. Everything around her seems unusual, which makes her feel confused. But then a luxurious interior with a magnificent chandelier appears before her, and she realizes that this is not where she should be. Lying in bed, Soleil thinks about her money. The loss of 1.7 billion has left her desperate. She is outraged about the fate of those funds. Looking out the window at the view, Soleil realizes that even after taxes, this amount could solve many problems in her life. She remembers how, as a teenager, she wanted to go to another dimension. Now, being there, she wonders why this happened only now. A maid enters the room and introduces herself as Anne. She promises to help Soleil regain her memory and make things work in the new world. The maid offers Soleil a glass of water, but she keeps thinking about her lost money. Thoughts of billions won't leave her. As she explores the new place, Soleil notices the cold around her but assures her that it doesn't bother her. Anne lovingly brings her a cloak. Sitting at the table, Soleil feels better when the maid offers her tea and buns. The warmth and care calm the girl, restoring her strength. Soleil, a girl with red hair and violet eyes, remembers her mother's warm gaze, realizing the power of her kindness and love. As a child, Soleil's mother would invite her to play at dusk, offering her a distraction from heavy thoughts and finding joy in simple moments. Soleil sadly asked where they were going, and her mother, without going into details, said that they were just going for a walk, moving further and further away from home. The mother left little Soleil alone on the bench, telling her that she would return soon, and ordered her to stay where she was, promising to leave for a while. The girl, while waiting for her mother, witnessed a terrible incident. Her father, drunk, was arrested by the police while resisting. Soleil realizes that she will never see her mother again, but even then she tries to hold back her tears, keeping her courage in front of strangers. In the present, Soleil, an adult, reflects on her family and realizes that those around her now cannot replace those she lost. She looks at the tea, seeing her memories reflected in it, and realizes that true love and care are meant for another version of her. Soleil asks the maid Anne where she is and what happened to her, trying to re-establish a fragile connection with reality. The maid explains that she is the youngest daughter of the ducal family, always weak and in need of help, and who never leaves the walls of her house. After her mother's death, Soleil was left with her father and 3 older brothers. The first brother, the knight commander, is absent due to military duties. The second Haman brother, a pink-haired magician, gives off an enigmatic impression that makes one wonder what lies beneath his magic. The third brother, Gray, a self-titled master swordsman, is noted for his pride but never joined the knightly order. Soleil, not used to communicating with her brothers, is confronted by their frankness. She accepts this situation with moderation, but feels tension. Despite the difficulties, the brothers cared for Soleil, which she noticed, but expressed with a restrained awareness, nodding her head shyly. Soleil senses the third brother's arrogant tone, which makes her question her role in the family, becoming irritated inside. However, the kind maid supports her, noticing the first changes in her behavior, encouraging her in the hope of returning her memories. Soleil begins to realize something important about her soul and her past. She feels a connection to the world which seems to come alive within her. As he reflects, he considers the possibility of another life where his memories return like the plot of a hero story. The discovery in the hallway serves as a final push to her reflections, forcing her to think more deeply about the past and her present. Soleil buys a lottery ticket full of hope. A moment of anxiety gives way to a joyful surprise. She wins a huge sum. The girl is overcome with euphoria. She screams with happiness, dreaming of how her life will change thanks to the 1.7 billion won she won. The dreams are interrupted by a strange event. The money comes to life in the form of a winged object, greets her and seems to disappear, leaving Soleil lost. Waking up in an unfamiliar place, he realizes that he is in another world. Instead of the joy of winning, he feels helplessness and melancholy. Lying in bed, Soleil is depressed. Her appetite has disappeared, and her thoughts are filled with homesickness and unfulfilled dreams of wealth. A glance out the window reveals a view of a fantasy world. Soleil suffers a feeling of injustice and begs the forces that brought her here to bring her back. Her maid, Anna, tries to care for her mistress by reminding her that she needs to eat. Soleil remains weak, avoiding food and comfort. She gets up, but her body is exhausted. Soleil feels exhausted, and her low blood pressure makes her aware of her unhealthy condition. Noticing the absence of the family meal, he remembers his past life and involuntarily experiences a feeling of bitterness and longing for simple joys. Soleil realizes that her journey began with a victory, but instead of happiness, she faces a test in a fantasy world where the future remains uncertain. The maid eagerly helps Soleil, warning her against overexertion, but the girl internally admits that she is still not used to her new body. The stranger in the shadows realizes that Soleil has enough strength to go for a walk. His sarcastic tone sounds both annoying and mysterious. Soleil recognizes the voice and reacts with irritation. Her thoughts are filled with indignation. She is clearly unhappy with his interference in her life. A man appears before Soleil with a mocking smile. She immediately understands who he is, and her guesses provoke internal indignation. Soleil, confused, asks the maid if that man always speaks so boldly. Her discontent grows. The man grabs her hand, trying to get an answer as to whether she really doesn't remember anything. His voice is both demanding and worried. He notices that Soleil has lost weight noticeably, and this worries him sincerely. Her look expresses the hidden pain she tries to hide. Soleil harshly asks him not to treat her with such familiarity. Her words sound confident and cold, like an attempt to establish boundaries. The man responds with a sarcastic smile, reminding her that her reaction is much better than constant apologies and complaints. He is clearly satisfied. He advises Soleil to take care of herself and promises that one day he will become her personal knight, but the girl resolutely rejects his care. Soleil looks at the boy with distrust, struck by the idea that he is the one who should become her knight. She doubts his abilities. When she tells others about it, Soleil expresses her surprise. It seems that there is no one better around her. She is irritated by the need to choose. The characters are shown surrounding Soleil, and she refers to herself in the third person, adding to the comic effect. Soleil wonders if this young man could be a good knight. She is afraid that this could end in her defeat. The young man reacts with slight sadness, assuming that Soleil hates him. He feels discouraged by her attitude. Surprised by the boy's words, Soleil feels hurt by the fact that he speaks in the third person, as if he were imitating her. The boy cheerfully reminds her that she herself said something similar. He skillfully plays on her irritation to diffuse the situation. Soleil is angry that the guy keeps following her and nonchalantly suggests that he might be hungry, which is the reason for her irritation. The boy politely tells her that Soleya cannot eat greasy food and offers her something light. Soleya, indignant, abruptly interrupts him. Despite all her objections, the boy continues to insist, suggesting that he should be her knight, which causes her mixed feelings. Soleya is angry with the boy, trying to hide her feelings. It is the first time he sees her so energetic and is playfully surprised by her behavior. Tired, Soleya sits at the table and gives strict instructions to the maid. Her determination grows stronger despite her slight uncertainty. The boy kindly advises Soleya to drink milk first so as not to overeat. Its softness contrasts with its hardness. Soleya is surprised by his appearance, wondering when he came. He pretends to be sad, trying to make her smile. Having decided to join the meal, the boy demonstrates insolence, which causes irritation but also hidden sympathy. Soleya, remaining stern, orders him to leave the table and eat somewhere else, emphasizing her independence. The boy realizes that she doesn't remember anything, but he's glad about it. He enjoys her honesty in not knowing his past. His words about her razor-sharp behavior make Solo think she feels out of place. His face becomes serious and a slight smile hides his inner experiences. His reaction remains a mystery. Soleya reflects that her essence will not change even if she ends up in another body. This moment emphasizes her depth. The girl remembers her father, admitting that his existence only made her life worse. Her sad thoughts are accompanied by gloomy images. One day, the father left the house and returned 3 days later, drunk and aggressive. His appearance became the cause of another nightmare for the entire family. Since there was no one at home, the father, furious, destroyed everything around him. By breaking things, he seemed to project his inner pain into the surroundings. Tired of the chaos, the little girl dreamed of growing up quickly and running away from that house. Her desire to escape grew stronger. The moment came that changed his life forever. The pain and fear reached a critical point, and he decided to take desperate action. She pushed her drunken father to the point of unconsciousness. It became an act of revenge for all the years of fear and humiliation. When she fell, the girl panicked and could not check whether she had survived. In horror, she ran without even looking back. She ran through the forest without stopping. There was only one thought running through her head: what to do if he caught up with her. Exhausted and wounded, she did not know what had happened to her father, whether he was alive or dead. For her, this remained an unsolved mystery. Since then, she never returned to that house. Only the memories of those events remained with her, like an eternal shadow of the past. A few months after the move, strangers found the girl near the restaurant where she lived. They told her about her father's debts. The debts were registered in his name. The man at the door told him that changing the name would not help and that he now had to pay them. Realizing that his father was still alive, he became lost in his thoughts, and the cracks in the walls seemed to reflect his inner state. She looked at the strangers in her room with cold determination. The words of one of them sounded like a challenge, but they did not break her. An inner voice called out to her, awakening her from her thoughts. But the noise around her forced her to focus on what was happening in reality. The girl took on any job to survive. The 12-hour shifts at the factory became a hard but necessary routine for her. Attempts to find a new job through interviews consistently ended in failure, exacerbating her feelings of helplessness and isolation. She was offered a job through acquaintances at the factory, assured that the place would become a family to her, but she felt there was a trap. The new family members simply took advantage of her trust. False promises made her feel deceived and alone. She found a lottery ticket and was shocked by the amount she won. The spark of hope made her think of a new beginning. A young man with red hair angrily reminds Soleya that it's time for her to eat her soup, noticing that she is lost in her thoughts and ignoring his words. Soleya is surprised to see his unexpectedly affectionate behavior. This causes her slight confusion and hidden anxiety. She stares at the bowl of soup in front of her, clearly unsure whether to try it. Her thoughts are filled with questions. The red-haired man reproaches Soleya for never eating anything. His tone is stern, but his concern is evident. He advises her to focus on the food and not on the appearance. The maid suggests replacing the plate, considering it too hot. Despite everything, Soleya takes a spoon and decides to try the soup. Her inner monologue sounds conciliatory. Enough. She notices that the young man is not as scary as he first seemed. The atmosphere softens a little. The redhead hints that Soleya has something important to say. She is perplexed, waiting for an explanation from him. Her words sound slightly ironic. They now sound like brother and sister. This confuses Soleya. As she leaves the room, she muses that he is not going to pursue her. Soleya decides not to go into details and just walks away. Soleya, a girl with bright red hair, finds herself in a huge library filled with books. She is amazed by the number of volumes surrounding her and is in awe of their secrets. A mysterious book catches her eye. She approaches cautiously, wondering what those ancient pages hide. When she opens the book, she discovers a text that surprises her. It seems to be directly connected to her past, revealing facts that she was unaware of. Soleya is immersed in her reading, but is interrupted by a servant who informs her that the king himself has summoned her immediately. This makes her feel nervous and confused. She prepares to meet the king, wondering why he decided to call her now. Thoughts of the book and the challenge fill her head. Seeing the king, Soleya tries to control herself. The king, smiling kindly, asks her how she is and invites her to sit down. She cautiously replies that she's fine, but privately admits that his charm helps her deal with the awkwardness of the situation. The king gets down to business and takes out a folder. He mentions that it is a list of the inhabitants of the duchy, which leaves Soleya a little confused. In the folder, she finds information that shocks her to the core. The information seems incredible, making her doubt its veracity. Shocked, Soleya tries to make sense of what she saw. Reality collapses, and she realizes that her past and present are connected by a secret she never suspected. Soleya looks tense as she holds the envelope in her hands. Her eyes widen in shock and her thoughts race. There is something about the contents that worries her deeply. The desperate girl decides to leave. Her abrupt actions make Gray react with mockery. He doesn't seem to take her words seriously, which angers her even more. Soleya studies the document and cannot believe what she sees. Among the text, she notices unexpected words that provoke a mixture of anger and bewilderment in her. Returning to the letter, she cannot cope with the emotions overwhelming her. Her face expresses confusion, and her thoughts wander in search of explanations. Soli's father says he doesn't know anything about the man she's looking for. His words only increase her doubts and make her remember small details from the past. Soleya recalls moments related to the money she once lost. She realizes the connection between what she holds in her hands and her memories. Her suspicions are confirmed. The document mentions a large sum of money related to her past. She understands that everything is much more complicated than it seemed. Soleya's father tries to support her, suggesting that love can heal even the wounds of the past. He is sure that everything can be fixed. He sarcastically points out that even the proposed list contains absurd options. His criticism sounds harsh, but his words are full of hidden pain. The father remembers his youth and reflects on how he could have lived differently. His thoughts make Soleya reflect on her path and her decisions. Soleya's father resents her demands on people, pointing out that her high expectations are motivated by her own success, which creates tension between them. Soli's frustrated father accuses her of trusting too much in those who have proven to be unreliable. A mutually recriminating argument breaks out between them. Soleya responds calmly but firmly to her father's reproaches. She jokingly comments that if the man turns out to be a slave, she will sell him, which leaves him very puzzled. Her words about betrayal paralyze her father in confusion. Soleya states that she would have ended the relationship anyway, showing her firmness. The father begins to doubt when he sees Soleya laughing. He is tormented by thoughts about whether his conjectures were true, but Soleya categorically denies it. Reflecting on her persistence in searching for Dawn, her father suggests that it is due to her deep feelings. He is surprised by the strength of her affection. The father remembers his youth and realizes that there was a time when he could not imagine life without his beloved. He tries to understand her feelings, but does not agree with her actions. Inner emotions overwhelm her. Despite her understanding, she cannot accept the fact that the person she is attached to turned out to be unworthy. Soleya's father decides to talk to her more calmly. He asks who hurt her, trying to understand their motives. Soleya confidently says that there is no such person in her life. She adds that she does not even remember her previous feelings, emphasizing that she is not worried about him. Soleya talks to her father. He tries to comfort her, assuring her that her health will recover and asking her not to say words that hurt him. The girl reflects on his words, feeling troubled by them. The father reminds her how hard it is to hear his daughter doubt his worth. Soleya realizes that her father loved her mother, Soleya, very much, and this fact moves her deeply. The atmosphere becomes more intimate and warm. The father, full of emotion, says that he will always love her. His gaze is full of tenderness and sincerity, which awakens deep emotions in her. Feeling weak, Soleya apologizes and asks for permission to leave. Her father lets her go with understanding, but there is concern in his eyes. She leaves thinking about her father's words. The man notices that her words imply something he didn't expect and asks her not to surprise him in the future. Soleya turns around with a slight smile and reflects that her father may have misunderstood her. There is a gleam and a twinkle in his eyes. The father is bewildered and stunned. The confusion is reflected on his face, which adds a bit of comedy to the moment, breaking the tension. Soleya, sure of her thoughts, leaves with a slight smile, leaving him bewildered. She feels that her journey has only just begun. Deep inside, she feels certain that the truth hidden in their lives will soon be revealed. Her resolve strengthens and her gaze is set on the future. Soleya realizes that her past no longer matters and that the father she thought was hers is not her real father at all. Thoughts disturb her mind. Lying in bed with a fever, Soleya barely notices what is happening. Her condition causes concern among those around her. Her face shows weakness and fatigue. After asking the maid if she is alive, Soleya learns that the girl was going to call a doctor. This makes her think about what happened. Suddenly, Soleya gets out of bed and loudly declares that she is leaving. Her impulse seems unexpected and inconsiderate. Reflecting on her past, she remembers the real Soleya and wonders, what really happened to her? This makes her feel sorry. A magical book with a mysterious pattern appears in Soleya's hands. This opens the doors to an unknown world. As she explores the deserted corridor, she feels alone. The sound of the door closing adds to the feeling of isolation. Soleya finds a strange book with notes she didn't make. She is confused when she realizes the text predicts the future. As she turns the pages, she sees that they are blank, further increasing her anxiety. A pen falls to the floor, symbolizing something important. Finding an unusual pen, Soleya feels its magical energy. This becomes the beginning of her new path towards truth and the unknown. Soleya, dressed in an exquisite dress, holds a pen in her hands. She is overcome with anxiety, her gaze fearful and focused, as if something important were about to change. The girl looks at the feather and realizes that she can influence the future. Her thoughts are filled with fear and surprise at the possible consequences. Soleya reflects on the incredible possibilities of the pen and questions his own sanity. The thought of returning to his former life crosses his mind. When he touches the pen, strange phenomena occur. The paper becomes unreachable, causing panic and fear of the unknown. Desperate, the girl tries to touch the paper, but her efforts are in vain. Fear grows and the tension in the room increases. Suddenly, Soleya falls to the ground. The force holding her back seems to weaken. She is exhausted. Little pieces are flying everywhere. The girl looks at herself in shock, feeling intense pain throughout her body. Her thoughts are confused. She doesn't understand what is happening to her. Soleya raises her head and decides to fight despite the pain. Her determination awakens, and she is determined to regain control. The castle servants are worried about her disappearance. They discuss the possibility that she has fainted and rush to check the nearest places. Soleya appears in the hallway, looking around in surprise. She hears a noise and tries to understand why everyone is looking for her. Soleya sees her brother's dark expression before her and feels afraid, remembering his stern gaze. Anxiety awakens in her soul again. The girl mentally asks to go home, wondering how everything could have turned out this way. She dreams of correcting the mistakes of the past and starting a new life. When Soleya wakes up, she notices her brother leaning over her. His voice is full of concern, but she still can't fully comprehend what's happening. Her brother tells Soleya that her leg is broken. The girl's confused reaction shows that she is in shock at what she heard. A fight breaks out between them. Soleya accuses her brother of hitting her, but he responds sarcastically, calling her a weakling. The conflict is escalating. The girl is shocked to find her leg immobilized. Her brother explains that her injury is a result of her own carelessness and weakness. Soleya is shocked to learn that she will have to recuperate for 2 months. She considers this an unacceptable waste of time, remembering her obligations. Soleya continues to argue with her brother, unhappy with his indifference. He holds his notes in his hands, ignoring her indignation. The girl notices that he is reading her notes, written in a moment of desperation. She wonders why he is silent, but confusion can be seen in her brother's eyes. The silence drags on. Soleya begins to suspect that her words have touched him. She decides that silence can say more than any explanation. The brother studies the red book with interest, his confused look indicating that its contents surprise him. Soleya looks at her brother with suspicion, not understanding exactly what he found in the book, her gaze full of incomprehension and slight indignation. Soleya's thoughts are filled with confusion. She tries to understand why her brother is so fascinated with the book because she didn't even know such books existed. The brother tries to justify himself by pointing out that Soleya is always at home and might also find those books interesting, although he is embarrassed by her reaction. Soleya is shocked, her voice shaking with outrage as she demands an explanation of what strange book ended up in her brother's hands. A flash of understanding occurs in his brother's mind. He remembers that this is a book with romantic scenes, which increases his confusion and slight panic. Soleya looks at the book in confusion, wondering how they got it, her gaze becoming more determined. A little nervous, the brother tries to convince Soleya that he was unaware of the contents of the book, but her insistence makes him even more nervous. Emotions are running high. The brother insists that he has already apologized for his actions, but feels it is unfair to force him to read the book out loud. The tension eases. An indignant Soleya demands proof that what is written in the book is actually true, which again leaves her brother baffled. Soleya screams at her brother angrily, demanding that he fulfill her request. Her burning gaze and emotion highlight the tension of the moment. The brother, feeling humiliated and confused, wonders why he is being so unfairly reproached. His depression conveys a slightly comic tone. He reluctantly agrees to her demand, takes the book, but asks her not to spread the message that he is reading something like that. Soleya sternly warns her brother not to tell anyone about this. She is willing to continue, but maintains a stern appearance. The brother begins to read the text from the book. Soleya, sitting opposite, seems relaxed, but the moment is imbued with notes of irony and slight embarrassment. While reading, the brother comes across explicit descriptions in the book, which causes him anxiety. Soleya, on the other hand, seems indifferent to his confusion. The brother's confusion reaches its peak, and he refuses to continue reading, accusing his sister of abusing her position. Angry, he reproaches her for using him only when it suits her. An emotional argument breaks out between them. Soleya wonders why her book, which is supposed to be a practical tool, reads more like a novel. This increases her irritation. She admits that her brother is strange, although she finds it amusing, but there is clearly tension between them because of this situation. There is a knock on the door of the elegant room. Gray politely invites him in, and Soleya sarcastically comments that he is acting like the boss. The butler opens the door, announcing that Soleya's friends have arrived. There is excitement in the air and a premonition of an unexpected visit. Soleya is surprised by Gray's reaction, who asks her if she has any friends. She confidently explains that they visit her often. Preparations for the meeting begin, but Gray decides to leave so as not to interfere. He finally advises her to let him know if anything happens. Soleya is in her room asking to hide the bruise. She prepares for the meeting, wondering why she is obliged to receive guests even in that state. Julie, Lemillion, and Cyril enter. Lemillion notices with concern the injury on Soleya's leg and remembers how worried she was about her. Gray watches this meeting from afar. Not believing that Soleya is so close to these girls, he finds her behavior strange. Soleya quietly thanks her friends for their support, explaining that the injury is uncomfortable, but that the disease has already subsided. Julie, Lemillion, and Cyril are discussing something in whispers. Soleya looks at them suspiciously, sensing hidden emotions. Finally, he asks directly why they are whispering. Lemillion quickly replies that it is nothing serious, but the tension remains. Lemillion notes with interest that Soleya's way of speaking has changed since she lost her memory. The blonde looks at her with a slight mockery. In a dark environment, Lemillion reminds Solea how she used to speak respectfully, but now her behavior has changed. Solea is surprised by the strange feeling that arises in her soul. She wonders what is happening to her. Lemillion claims that Solea's formality made him feel uncomfortable and suggests that they get to know each other again. Cyril agrees with this observation. Cyril talks about her heritage. She has large farmlands. She invites Solea to visit her anytime. Julie reveals that she is involved in the slave trade. She invites Solea to contact her if she needs a new servant. Lemillion talks about the family textile business, highlighting its importance and the power of its influence in the region. Lemillion takes Solea's hand, reminding her that she has lost her memory. This moment is imbued with a slight sadness and regret. Solea glares at Lemillion, accusing her of being arrogant and trying to take a higher position in their interactions. Smiling, Lemillion notices that Solea seems uncomfortable and suggests that she return to her previous formal attitude. Lemillion comforts Solea, reminding her that she is not alone because she has friends. With her smile and warm support, she seems to brighten up the evening. Solea senses that something strange is happening. She is surprised how she managed to make such influential friends, as she rarely leaves the mansion. Reflecting on the strangeness of her surroundings, Solea is plunged into painful thoughts. She is tormented by the suspicion that she is surrounded by empty illusions. Julie asks Solea with interest about her ambitions. However, Solea responds with doubt, saying that the path to the dukedom seems unattainable to her. Lemillion reports with mild surprise that Solea is the sole heir to her house. Solea freezes, shocked by what she hears. Gray's troubled past is revealed to the audience. He was once a vagabond, but the Duchess saw something more in him and made him her knight. The disdain for friends is evident. They consider Gray unworthy, and even discuss selling him, not appreciating his loyalty. Lemillion reminds Solea of her abilities. She is confident that by joining forces, their families will be able to manage the land and make a profit. The atmosphere is becoming increasingly tense. Solea feels confused by the decisions imposed on her and feels the pressure from those around her. Finally, she decides that she can't listen to these arguments anymore. Her feelings overwhelm her, and she finds the strength to walk away from the imposed decisions. Solea, with her eyes closed, wakes up, barely reacting. Her face seems calm, but the tension can be felt in her gaze. The atmosphere is mysterious. She perks up and her soft tone suddenly turns defiant. Solea teases Julie as if provoking her, playfully reminding her of something. Julie and her companions are clearly shocked by Solea's words. They exchange glances, trying to understand what just happened, their confusion growing. Solea explains that she has just regained consciousness and that she suffers from amnesia. Her relaxed demeanor contrasts with the indignation of her interlocutors. Solea, wittily joking with Julie, suggests they go outside to take care of a cockroach. Julie is stunned by her bluntness. Solea continues to mock, emphasizing how easy it is to replace Julie with someone from the street. Her words sound simultaneously sarcastic and superior. Julie loses her temper, her anger reaches its limit. She calls Solea insolent and tries to attack her, but stops in anger. Julie accuses Solea of losing respect. The situation is heating up. The girls in shiny dresses are tense and ready for conflict. Solea reminds them of her own words, and her sarcastic smile highlights how she plays with their weaknesses. She confidently claims her right to the title of Duchess. The interlocutors are shocked to realize that their arguments have been defeated. Solea speaks sarcastically about how everyone clings to her like honey, her eyes flashing with hidden anger, heightening the tension of the moment. Solea furiously screams Gray's name, showing her determination to get to the bottom of what's going on, her anger palpable even from a distance. A rumble is heard in the room as Lemillion, holding a cold gaze, stands witness to the conflict between Solea and those around him. Gray appears, and his aura intensifies the atmosphere. Solea, seeing him, softens a little, and the room is filled with an unexpected light and tenderness. Gray becomes concerned when he notices the redness on Solea's cheek. His intense gaze suggests that he is determined to protect her from everyone. Suddenly, Gray enters the room and sees Lemillion, Solea, and the others. His stern voice turns into a question about who offended her, surprising those present. Suddenly, Soleya greets Gray playfully, trying to hide her pain. Her laugh sounds like a challenge, but her eyes are still filled with resentment. Gray examines Soleya carefully, noticing the swelling on her cheek. He repeats his question, seeking to uncover the truth and punish the guilty. Soleya holds back tears as she explains that she felt hurt by her past. The women, without hesitation, hit her, which hurt her even more. Gray, hearing this, becomes sad. His back expresses determination and hidden rage. His figure seems to promise retribution. Gray, seeing Soleya lose consciousness, quickly lifts her up, causing a commotion among the ladies present. Gray, without paying attention to those around him, takes Soleya away. He instructs the butler to escort the guests and decides to personally report what happened. Lemillion, Cyril, and the other guests panic and try to explain that there was a mistake, but Gray ignores their excuses and leaves the room with Julie. In a cozy atmosphere, Soleya jokingly comments on Gray's skill in handling the situation, while he himself, embarrassed, tries to hide his emotions. The smile on Gray's face betrays his inner turmoil. He mentally realizes the absurdity of the situation, but remains calm in front of Soleya. Soleya reflects on the people she has met. For her, they are all divided between those who try to please and those who only pretend, hiding the ridiculousness. Gray feels like a man walking on fragile ice placed by someone else. His thoughts are filled with a constant feeling of instability. He remembers meeting his sister who had lost her memory. This surprise adds new experiences and makes him think about the past. Soleya feels weak and unwanted in her family. She believes that her appearance only brought suffering to her loved ones and deprived them of happiness. Images from the past take her back to times when her family was happy. Now she feels as if she is the cause of their problems and mockery. The two girls comment that Soleya is the only legitimate daughter of the family and call the others beggars. They doubt the future heir. Soleya reflects on what it feels like to be unwanted. She feels like an outsider, as if her existence is only justified by the suffering of others. Gray looks into the room and calls out to Soleya. Her worried look underscores the tension of the moment, adding an underlying warmth to their connection. Soleya, who ran out into the street, is weak and staggering. Gray is shocked to see her faint again when they meet. When Soleya wakes up, she apologizes, her voice full of shame. Gray hopes to anger her to see her emotions, but all he sees is depression. Gray asks why Soleya wears warm clothes when it's not cold. She remains silent, avoiding answers, adding mystery to her behavior. Gray wants to tear down the wall surrounding his heart, but his plan backfires comically. Soleya literally tries to smash the wall with a hammer. Gray is surprised by Soleya's determination. He realizes that he only wanted to shake her up a bit, but he awakened unexpected powers in her. Soleya, exhausted by her actions, loses consciousness. Gray picks her up, worried and admiring her tenacity. Soleya notices the strange expression on Gray's face, understanding his feelings. She realizes that she can't accept him based on his background. Gray screams at Soleya in rage, his face contorted in a mix of anger and worry. He is in shock and can't believe what happened, condemning the situation. Soleya falls and Gray, reacting quickly, catches her in his arms. The surprise on their faces turns into tension, but he holds her tightly. Gray reprimands Soleya for her inaction during the fall. He also explains that her injuries are far more significant than the consequences of the fall. Gray, despite his confidence, believes that he should not have been bullied. He is lost in his thoughts and his gaze becomes sad. He muses that a single incident would be enough to achieve justice, but in this world, laws are not always on the side of truth. Gray decides that the blows he received were not in vain. A plan is brewing in his head that could turn the situation in his favor. Soleya shares her difficult story, loneliness after her mother's departure and her father's separation. She perceives her wounds as something insignificant. Gray believes compensation alone is not enough. He is determined to take care of those who hurt her, starting with the specific culprit. Finally, Gray warns her not to sacrifice herself for the sake of money. Soleya, however, is confident that cunning is the most effective way to achieve a goal. Gray fell to his knees, clutching his gun and staring into space. He thoughtfully analyzed what was happening, trying to understand why someone capable of defending himself would have to get involved in something like this. He found it hard to believe that there were normal circumstances behind all of this. Soleya said with a smile that if she were healthy, she would not have left everything as it was. She confidently declared that in that situation she would crush her attackers, using methods that seemed more like a pictorial representation of punishment than an actual plan. Gray, stunned by Soli's words, froze. Her confidence and boldness took him aback. At that moment he realized that her judgments about people and their actions sounded irritating, despite her kind tone, as if she didn't take what was happening seriously. An unexpected noise interrupted their conversation. Something crashed loudly in the room, causing both of them to become alert. They cautiously looked towards the door, preparing for the worst. Their conversation instantly transformed into an atmosphere of alarm and danger. Soli's father burst into the room, shocked by what he saw. His shrill scream filled the space, demanding an explanation. He was followed by a servant who reported that the girls had been rude to Soleya for a long time. This news came as a great shock and stirred emotions in everyone present. Gray stared at Soleya, as if he wanted to read something on her face. Her calm reply that she had no recollection of such insults only strengthened his suspicions. He began to doubt the veracity of her words, sensing a hidden subtext in her actions. Soli's father reproached him for his silence. He was pained to realize that she had not turned to him for help. He reproached himself for not having noticed her suffering. His concern was genuine, and his care earned the respect of those who witnessed the scene. Soleya tried to calm her father down by telling him that what had happened did not merit such strong emotions. She added that everything ended well and that she managed to move forward on her own. Her carefree smile hid the true emotions that she tried to repress. The father, on the other hand, was outraged. He said that the insult to his daughter and his family could not go unpunished. His look expressed his determination to restore justice. Soli's words could not shake his determination to punish the guilty party and protect his honor. Emotions were running high as Soli's father resorted to angry reproaches. His strong reaction to what had happened only emphasized how much he loved his daughter and was willing to do everything possible for her well-being. It was a moment when his love and anger merged into an inseparable whole. The man, Soleya's father, asks the question with desperation in his voice, condemning the act that seems unforgivable to him. He is outraged that someone could manipulate her at such a cost, for their own ends. His gaze is full of anxiety and rage. He reproaches her for what she said. Soleya looks broken. Her eyes are filled with horror. She sits with her head down. Her appearance conveys fear and utter despair. The room feels oppressive, as if it reflects her inner state. It was as if she had lost touch with reality. The father, realizing something important, gently calls her name. There is no anger in his voice anymore, only excitement and concern. He is trying to understand what happened to his daughter. His outstretched hand shows his desire to support her. Soleya begins to apologize to her father. Her voice shakes as she asks for forgiveness, admitting her mistake. The girl wails, her words sounding halting, as if she is afraid to even look him in the eyes. The father is shocked and worried about her condition. The girl continues to apologize, repeating her words. She almost whispers, convincing her father of her guilt. The father, full of anxiety, tries to get her attention. He gently asks her to look at him to make sure he is okay. Soleya painfully claims that she considers herself guilty of everything. She grabs her father's hand, trying to stay in reality. The father, shocked, calls out to her, trying to bring her back to him. He can't understand why she is so upset. The father remains in the shadows, his gaze filled with sadness. He calls her by name, trying to reach her heart. His appearance conveys a deep sense of helplessness, mixed with love and care for his daughter. Soleya, sitting on the bed, continues to apologize. She avoids looking at him as if she is afraid of being judged. Her father, standing next to her, asks her why she is crying, his voice full of softness and concern. Her condition worries him even more. The man touches her face, trying to comfort her. He notices how scared she is. The girl can barely stand. Her face is covered in tears. He tries to understand what could have hurt her soul so much and brought her to such a state. The dialogue is interrupted, leaving the father in a state of deep thought. He looks at Soleya with pain in his eyes, unable to find words. A heavy silence hangs between them, filled with mutual anxiety and a desire to fix everything. Gray sincerely apologizes to Soleil for letting his emotions get the best of him. He admits that he shouldn't have yelled at her, even when he was depressed. His voice is soft but confident. Soleil's father watches what happens, remaining silent, but his gaze is full of support. Soleil remains in the room, and her father and Gray leave her. Before leaving, her father wishes her rest, making it clear that she deserves peace. Gray turns at the door, his gaze concerned but full of unease. A slight tension remains in the air, despite the warm words of farewell. After a while, Gray returns. He notices her thoughtfulness and asks her carefully how she feels. His tone is sincere and there is concern in it. Soleil sits up in bed, her figure looking fragile in the rays of light. She looks at him, but her answer is reserved. Confused, Soleil explains that the scream shook her, but that she had already regained consciousness. Her smile seems forced. She is trying to hide her feelings. However, Gray senses her inner tension. His attentive gaze captures every detail, every movement of her trembling hands. Gray understands that she needs support, and holding out his hand promises to be there. Soleil is surprised by his actions. His gaze is full of doubt, but in his eyes she sees trust and warmth. In the silence of the room arises a feeling of closeness and trust that both have avoided for a long time. Her thoughts drift back to the past. She remembers how her mother taught her that family is not just about blood, but also about memories, caring, and time spent together. These images warm her heart and help her cope with her current experiences. Something more than gratitude appears in her soul. Soleil realizes that Gray is sincere. He makes her feel that there is no need to hide behind a mask. He accepts her as she is and makes her understand that it is okay to be vulnerable. These words penetrate into the very heart, destroying her fears and doubts. She takes his hand carefully. Her touch becomes a symbol of trust and support. This is not just a gesture, but a promise to be there despite all the difficulties. Gray makes her feel that she is not alone in her experiences, that he is ready to walk this path together. A soft light enters through the window. Soleil and Gray are together, their hands holding each other tightly. It is a moment of understanding. Everything they have been through has brought them closer. A feeling arises in their hearts that they are more than just acquaintances. They are a family, united not only by words but also by actions. Outside, flowers bloom in the sunshine, a symbol of new hope. Soleil and Gray look at each other with the warmth that only family can give. The world around them becomes warmer, and they understand that they still have many difficulties ahead of them, but together they will be able to face them. Gray flirts with Soleil with an innocent smile, causing the girl to explode with indignation. She reproaches him for his unacceptable behavior because they are like brother and sister. Gray is surprised by this reaction, but his harsh words only add fuel to the fire. The atmosphere between them is heating up. Soleil, with anger in her eyes, demands to know why Gray grabbed her hand, implying his interest in forbidden emotions. The boy defends himself by claiming that he did it on her orders, but the girl does not calm down, adding emotion to their squabble. The girl accuses Gray of being shameless, pointing out that it is not appropriate for a grown man to hold her hand. Her condemning gaze strikes him to the core of his soul, and despite his attempts to justify himself, he remains confused and bewildered. Gray, stunned by the harshness of her words, protests loudly, expressing bewilderment at her sudden aggression. The emotional exchange continues, but Soleil is unwilling to back down and maintains her fighting spirit. Soleil screams in surprise, not believing Gray's words. Her shock is mixed with anger, which only seems to further fuel the tense conversation. Both sides refuse to budge, which only adds to the drama. Suddenly, laughter breaks out in the tense room. Soleil, sitting on the bed, stares at Gray, who seems amused by her violent reaction. The atmosphere, though tense, is imbued with hidden humor. The servants outside the door watch the meeting unfold and notice that despite their quarrels, Gray and Soleil still get along well. Their relationship, full of contradictions, evokes a slight smile and warmth in the observers. In the silence of the night, Soleil reflects on what happened. Lying in bed, she realizes how absurd the situation is. Her thoughts are full of contradictions, and she tries to understand why their interaction affected her so much. Soleil feels vulnerable after the argument. She realizes that she shouldn't react like that to Gray because he is not her real relative. Her thoughts wander as she tries to understand the nature of her emotions, feeling confused. She decides that she must soon leave this place and return home, but doubts grow within her. Her gaze is directed into space. Her thoughts are filled with reflections on the meaning of their relationship. The emotional background remains tense but sincere. In the silence of the night, in the hands of the heroine Soleil, a mysterious envelope shines with light. She, realizing its essence, mentally tells herself that it is Yoon-jeon, not Soleil, filling the moment with meaning and mystery. A knock at the door distracts the heroine, awakening a feeling of anxious anticipation in the room. A small figure of an unexpected guest appears at the door, causing Soleil to wonder what is going on. The guest makes a strange impression, his presence filling the air with magic. A man nearby notices a mysterious light and begins to suspect a connection to the stranger's magic. The hero observes the actions of a guest whose behavior seems too free to him. Soleil, on the other hand, perceives a comical and childish spontaneity in his gestures, which makes her smile. The guest begins to have fun with childish laughter. His sincerity and joy unexpectedly delight Soleil. She looks at him with warmth, experiencing a rare feeling of lightness. His behavior becomes playful and brings a smile to her face, which eases the tension in the room. The heroine begins to think that this strange stranger is somehow destroying the usual rules of her world. Lost in her thoughts, Soleil remembers a feeling of warmth and magic she hadn't felt in a long time. Her thoughts take her to a past world where she felt something similar. Light flows from his hands, and in that light appear images from the past, a magical fish that reminds him of the joys and warmth of his childhood. He remembers winters when everything was simpler, but the heat slowly turns into warmth. The room fills with fire, and Soleil panics. She feels like she is in the center of a raging fire, not understanding what is happening. Soleil, standing in the middle of the fire, realizes that her senses are heightening. Her thought is, "I'm being baked." It sounds alarming, but with a hint of irony. The heroine is ready to face the unknown with courage. Soleil finds herself surrounded by fire, which frightens and paralyzes her. She wonders what is happening and realizes that she cannot move. A feeling of helplessness invades her. The girl tries to call someone for help. Anxious and afraid, she calls into the void, hoping to find someone who will help her escape the fire. A mysterious hooded man appears before her. Soleil is surprised by his appearance. She is overcome with anxiety and curiosity at the same time, because she does not understand who he is and what relation he has to her situation. The mysterious stranger is surrounded by a magical glowing pattern. He looks at Soleil, and it seems to her that they have met somewhere before. There is something important hidden in this look. Soleil is confused and wonders, who is she in this strange situation? She begins to doubt the reality of what is happening, realizing how little she understands what is happening around her. When Soleil wakes up, she realizes that it was all a strange dream. Her body is relaxed, and she lies on a soft bed in a sunny room, reflecting on what she has seen. As Soleil regains her strength, she realizes that her leg has healed. This discovery brings her joy and relief. She cannot hide her smile and even rejoices like a child. Remembering what happened, he realizes that this is because of the powerful healer that the Duke invited. It took a long time for his body to recover, but magic did the impossible. Healed, Soleil enjoys the feeling of freedom and tries to walk around the room again. She is grateful and full of enthusiasm for how magic can be useful in such difficult situations. Everything that happens awakens in Soleil a new feeling of confidence and gratitude. She is ready to move forward, leaving behind the terrifying images of her dream and accepting the new reality with a smile. Soleil, a girl with red hair and purple eyes, stared at something in front of her, gathering her strength. She knelt down and decisively opened the ancient box, as if the answer to her most intimate questions was hidden there. Inside the box were things, a mystical book with magic symbols and a sheet of paper with mysterious notes. Soleil felt that these objects could be the key to her return home, and this decision gave her confidence. Despite her efforts, Soleil was unable to use the mysterious book. She tried with all her might to write at least something, but the words seemed to disappear from her pen, causing her irritation and helplessness. Her persistence paid off. The girl discovered that the book was being updated every day, erasing all the entries. This discovery surprised and alarmed her at the same time, giving her an idea of the difficulty of her task. Soon their peace was disturbed by uninvited guests. Several girls tried to provoke Soli into conflict, but keeping a cool head, she found a way to defend herself, which caused general surprise. Later, reflecting on her actions, Soleya noted that she should sometimes be more restrained. She laughed to herself, realizing that her outspokenness often got her into trouble, but it wasn't always a bad thing. That day, Soleya made a mistake. Her stepfather was not happy with her behavior. Although he was not her real father, the girl could not help but feel the weight of his condemnation. A mixture of guilt and resentment overwhelmed her. After this, Soleya began receiving daily letters from the Duke. These messages were unexpected and mysterious. She had no idea what kind of person was behind them, but their number began to intrigue her more and more. In one of the letters, the Duke apologized for his past behavior and suggested meeting for a cup of tea. His warm words written on the paper puzzled Soleil, leaving in her soul an ambiguous feeling of trust and doubt. The girl sensed that there was something more behind this letter. The Duke tried to establish a relationship with her, but she could not fully understand his motives. Deciding not to rush, she continued to reflect on her actions and new possibilities. The young man studied the letter with a tense expression on his face, analyzing it thoughtfully. He doubted whether he had managed to convey everything he wanted. Sweat ran down his temples as if he felt the weight of the importance of his message, full of deep feelings and hope for understanding. The envelope with the letter was slowly carried away by the wind. As a symbol of liberation from old grievances, it was a speech directed at Soleya, full of recognition of her pain and suffering. She had endured ridicule and humiliation for a long time, but now justice had triumphed and the guilty had been punished for their actions. One of the girls, trying to justify herself, desperately tried to explain her actions, but her words could not change the situation. She and her family would never be able to return to those lands. This decision marked a new beginning for those who had been unjustly harmed. Soleya was deeply moved when she read the letter. She understood that her brothers had suffered while protecting her. The author of the letter thanked her for her strength and reminded her how important her support was. Her emotions were mixed, pride for her loved ones and pain for past hurts. The letter mentioned how Soleya spent a lot of time with a certain person. One of her friends, described as a brazen young man, spoke of her with ironic praise, calling her a beautiful nothing. This caused a storm of emotions and a wave of bewilderment. The letter went on to mention the young man's punishment for his careless words. He had to walk 100 laps around the training ground to realize the gravity of his actions. The author of the letter humorously mentioned how the young man, even after the punishment, retained his enthusiasm. Soleya thought about all this while holding the flower that suddenly appeared in her hands. This unexpected gesture seemed to emphasize the importance of the little things in life. Her thoughts oscillated between gratitude for the support and surprise at the unexpected events. She read the lines of the letter, which suggested that she spend the day in a peaceful environment, enjoying the good weather. The nature around her seemed to reflect her mood: lightness, peace, and hope for the best. The delicate flower in her hands became a symbol of support and new hope. It was the day Soleya realized how important small gestures of attention are, how the people around her are willing to protect and care for her, despite all the hardships she had to endure. The last lines of the letter were addressed to her with concern. The author asked her to think about herself and spend time with her loved ones. A slight smile lit up her face, full of gratitude and a desire to move on, leaving the past behind. Soleya, admiring the flowers under the window, thinks of the time she can spend with Herman. She notes the beauty of the day, perfect for having tea on the terrace, and thanks him for his thoughtfulness in sending her her favorite tea. An atmosphere of peace surrounds her. She looks at the letter and suddenly notices a strange feeling within herself. Thoughts of Herman stir her heart, and she can't help but admire his thoughtfulness. He seems too perfect for a man who has lived his life in battle. Soleya sits on the terrace holding a flower. Her thoughts wander. She feels that the world around her is completely different. Here, the adults behave like real gentlemen and ladies, surrounded by sophistication and care. She smiles and thinks that there are moments of absolute happiness in this world. At that moment, she is interrupted by a maid who announces a new opportunity for tea, which arouses Soli's slight interest and surprise. The girl decides that she wants to enjoy tea in a place where equally beautiful flowers grow. The maid responds enthusiastically, as Herman has made the effort to deliver her favorite teas to her, adding a touching touch to their interaction. However, Soleil feels a little uneasy. She is surprised at how happy the maid is about her recovery, believing it to be just a slight improvement after the injury. Deep inside, she still can't believe such sincere concern from those around her. In the backyard, they drink tea in the middle of a lush garden. Soleil enjoys the moment of peace and the cozy atmosphere, involuntarily admiring the beauty of the place and the sophistication of the surrounding details. Suddenly, Herman appears among the flowers and asks her how she feels. His concern seems genuine, and Soleil feels internally embarrassed by this attention. She answers calmly, trying to hide her slight excitement. Soleil notices that Herman, with his cold but mysterious expression, is the second son of a noble family. She is struck by his way of communicating, in which there is something elusively kind, despite his severe appearance. Eventually, the conversation leads her to realize that Herman may be a good person. His words about the possibility of helping her in the future touch her deeply, leaving her with a feeling of gentle surprise and slight hope. Surrounded by a sunny garden, Soleil noticed a mysterious young man in a white suit. His calmness and sophistication were mesmerizing, creating the feeling that he was a living work of art, surrounded by the glow of flowers. Lost in thought, she admired his expressive face, noting that he could become a media star. His appearance had a magnetic effect, making one want to follow his every move. Comparing him to another man, Gray, you notice the difference. If the former delights with his gentle beauty, the latter inspires fear and respect. His dark aura emphasizes strength and authority. The young man turns to Soleil, and she is struck by his special combination of innocence and maturity. Each of his features seems to tell its own story, and his gaze draws you in, making you forget about everything. Her silhouette, illuminated by a soft light, looked like a scene from a movie. Soleil looked like the heroine of a romantic story, where the main character embodies perfection. However, he quickly snaps back to reality, remembering his ambitions. His thoughts turn to success and returning home, where he finds an impressive legacy and much adoration. Later at the table, Soleil expressed her gratitude to her companion for his help that evening. Her words expressed genuine gratitude for the attention shown. The young man replied that he only helped her because she seemed weaker than usual. His words sounded sincere but reserved, emphasizing his caring nature. Soleil noted that she felt weak from the start. The young man said that she had always been different from others and added that at that moment she looked especially fragile. The sudden appearance of a servant with news disturbed their peace. Soleil and her companion remained on guard, preparing for future events that could change everything around them. The solemn atmosphere is interrupted by the news of the arrival of the head of the Mage Association. The man in the formal suit seems slightly agitated. This important event heralds the start of something significant, causing anxiety and anticipation in all present. Soleil, sitting at an elegant table in the garden, notices a stranger. Her peace is interrupted by the question of who this mysterious guest is. His appearance causes tension, and the shadow on the girl's face emphasizes her confusion. A young man with pink hair and a determined look accepts the news of the leader's arrival. He remains calm on the outside, but inside he is seething with emotions. He asks you to prepare for the meeting, demonstrating his confidence and leadership qualities. Soleil wonders why she is being asked to return to her room, citing her poor health. She senses that someone is hiding something, and her gaze becomes wary. Her determination not to turn back grows stronger with each passing moment. Insisting on her own, the girl refuses to leave the place. She explains that her presence is entrusted to the forces of light, which means that she will stay. This gesture emphasizes her resilience and self-confidence despite the pressure. The young man sternly reminds him that his request is inappropriate. There is tension in the air, heightened by the flash of magical energy surrounding him. His determination and coldness are terrifying, but also fascinating at the same time. Soleya looks at him defiantly, thinking about his rudeness. She senses that there is a growing mystery surrounding the head of the Mage Association and wonders what exactly is stopping him from meeting her. This moment increases her curiosity. The young man leaves, leaving behind a tense atmosphere. He argues that his presence is irrelevant, which leads Soleya to rethink her role in that place. But the girl decides not to give up, despite his harshness. Left alone, Soleya reflects on what happened and her next steps. She decides to return to the book she used earlier, hoping to find answers or write something important. Her expression shows a mix of stubbornness and inner fire. Her figure, illuminated by the sunlight, reflects inner strength. Despite what she has experienced, she intends to continue on her path, following her convictions. Her determination remains unshakable, and the mystery of the chapter only strengthens her desire to know the truth. In the garden, surrounded by shadows, Soleya notices the figure of a stranger. His elegant posture and somber appearance stand out against the tranquility of nature. The whispering sounds put her on alert, but her attention is drawn to his gaze, directed at the cup in his hands. His calmness seems strange and alarming. The stranger looks up, and a mysterious smile appears on his face. His quiet words to Soleya make her shudder. It was as if he knew she would appear. The tension makes her thoughts confused, and the feeling of unreality of the moment invades her more and more. There is a tension between them, filled with a slight spark of magic. The man stands up, his figure looking menacing, but attractive. Soleya decides to step forward, ready to face what seems like an unpredictable challenge. He says he was looking forward to meeting her, which made her heart skip a beat. The stranger stares at her, as if sizing her up. His tone and manner indicate high rank, but his intentions remain a mystery, frightening her with their unexpected intensity. Soleya tries to hide her excitement, but her voice shakes. She wonders who he is and what he wants. Everything she notices reinforces her feeling that he is different. His presence seems too imposing to her, as if designed to overwhelm. The stranger admits that his interest in Soleya is due to her unique energy. His words sound like a revelation he wanted to convey from the beginning. She senses the magical aura emanating from him, increasing her distrust and making her cautious. Soleya interrupts his explanations, assuring him that she does not wish to buy anything and is not willing to participate in strange rituals or teachings. His attempt to remain calm is shattered by her unexpected sincerity. Every word she says seems carefully chosen. The man calls himself an idol, the head of the Mage Association. His voice is filled with confidence as he asks you to listen to him until the end. But Soleya remains firm and replies that she does not trust him, though his words touch something deep in her soul. Suddenly, the atmosphere changes as he approaches Soleya, and their auras intertwine. He points out that the energy emanating from her does not belong to this world. His thoughts become confused, and he realizes that he is in for something more than just a simple encounter. A fascinating moment breaks the tense silence. Soleya, sensing the strangeness of the situation, tries to maintain her independence, but deep down she understands that her destiny has changed. The man standing before her clearly plays an important role in this new turn of her life. Soleya feels a sudden wave of sadness as she recalls recent events. The paper she holds in her hands says 17 billion, but even this wealth does not bring her happiness. Thoughts of injustice overwhelm her. After winning a huge amount of money, Soleya finds herself in a desert where there are not even banks. She meets a man whose mysterious behavior makes her suspicious. The situation becomes tense and the atmosphere becomes strained. A dialogue full of hidden meanings begins between Soleya and her partner. The man offers to take her to the bedroom, but the girl replies that she can do it herself. Their communication is full of cold respect and distrust. The man looks at her with a mysterious smile. Soleya leaves with another maid, but something about her presence leaves a painful impression. Her words contain the promise of a future meeting. As Soleya and her companion leave, words about the upcoming meeting are heard. The man's deep baritone voice seems to penetrate the soul, leaving a slight chill. The girl leaves the place without turning around. Once in the room, Soleya exchanges views with the maid Anne. Their faces show wariness and bewilderment. Discussion about the mysterious man fills the evening. Soleya clearly does not trust the stranger. Anne reveals that the man is known as the great magician Eidolon. There are legends about him that say he has unmatched magical powers. The mention of his name causes confusion and interest among the girls. Anna's stories seem suspicious to Soleya. She wonders why the magician only teaches young Herman and not more capable people. She comes to the conclusion that it may be a matter of political ambition. Lying in her bed, Soleya reflects on the strangeness of what is happening. It seems to her that the magician is pursuing his own hidden goals. Perhaps he wants to gain the support of the Duke's family. Mystery surrounds these events. Soleya realizes that changes are coming to her life. Thoughts of the great wizard and his intentions haunt her. She feels part of a bigger game where there is much more at stake than just money. Soleya, overcome with doubt, reflects on her place in the world. She can't shake the feeling that she's in a strange place, where everything around her seems false. She tries to transfer her thoughts to the diary, which may help her sort things out. She is convinced that she is not Soleya. The thought echoes in her head like a furious protest. Looking at herself in the reflection, she sees a strange personality that tries to suppress her inner essence. Her only connection to the present is her diary. Soleya remembers how, after opening it, she suddenly found herself in this strange world. She begins to suspect that everything written in the diary can change reality. With great enthusiasm, he tries to test his assumption. However, despite my efforts, the pen refuses to write. He realizes that he cannot influence what happens by simply writing down his thoughts. Not giving up, Soleya decides to take action. She grabs the diary, but a feeling of helplessness comes over her. She wonders if this could be due to her weakness, her lack of strength. Soleya decides to get stronger. She starts doing push-ups, mentally preparing herself for the fight. Her desire to regain control of her life becomes her main motivation. Despite her weakness, she stubbornly counts each repetition. Her determination grows, and not even fatigue can dampen her enthusiasm. She defies her own limitations. His strength is still weak, like that of a newborn calf, but his spirit is unbreakable. His falls are accompanied by internal monologues, full of determination to overcome weakness. She swears to herself that she will be able to return home. Soleya's determination grows, and she clenches her fist, ready to continue her journey despite her tiredness and doubts. She continues to train, overcoming her weaknesses step by step. Each effort brings her closer to her goal. Soleya is confident that her return home is only a matter of time and willpower. Soleya, feeling an incredible surge of strength, opens a book with ancient symbols. She understands that she is now at the peak of her abilities, ready to make her long-held plans a reality. Her eyes shine with determination, and her laugh is full of confident energy. As she squeezes the pen, Soleya feels resistance, but she realizes that she no longer feels it as an insurmountable barrier, but as an elastic force that can be overcome. Her hand begins to move slowly, and the pen begins to yield to her will. Suddenly feeling like she can write, Soleya makes a sudden movement. But the magical resistance suddenly increases, and the pen slips from her hands, leaving a painful mark and making her cry out in surprise. A maid bursts into the room with a loud noise, alarmed by the sound of the fall. She anxiously asks if everything is okay and sees Soleya sitting on the floor, confused. The maid's gaze is full of concern. Soleya sits among the fallen things, breathing heavily. She is stunned but quickly composes herself. Her gaze falls on the open book, and a barely audible word escapes her mouth. This is the very work that changed her life. Realizing that the book she was holding was the second volume of the dangerous novel, the maid spoke its title in amazement. Her eyes fill with surprise and joy. She can hardly believe that the owner is holding this rare edition. The maid asks if Soleya has read the first part, and after receiving an evasive answer, is surprised by her mistress's secret passion. She notices a strange combination of seriousness and joy in her behavior. Left alone, the maid reflects on how little she knew about her mistress. Her embarrassment increases when she realizes she has violated her mistress's privacy. The girl apologizes and tries not to look at the book that is there. The maid cautiously invites Soleya to continue her studies, leaving the door behind her. Her voice is muffled, but there is a sense of respect for her lover's personal boundaries. However, in her soul, curiosity invades her. Soleya, raising her head, stares at the closed door for a while. She turns her attention back to the book, feeling that this time her efforts will definitely succeed. The girl's gaze becomes determined. Soleya, overwhelmed by anxiety, tries to justify herself to someone, but her words are lost in the air. Panicked, she heads for the mysterious mechanism on the wall. All her determination is directed towards the action that should change something in this tense situation. A sudden flash of rage runs through Soleya. She grips the dagger in her hand, channeling all of her pain and fear into this moment. Her eyes shine brightly with determination to destroy the threat that has haunted her and those she loves for so long. Night falls on the room where Soleya lies, overcome by weakness. Her breathing becomes labored and she turns to Anne for help, hoping to find salvation. But the shadows in the room only increase the feeling of hopelessness. Soleya opens her eyes and realizes that her body has become petrified. Her gaze is full of horror. She cannot move her head. The idea of having lost control of her body fills her heart with fear and bitterness. Gray, her faithful friend, bursts into the room. He is panicking as he tries to understand what happened. His face and voice reflect both anger and concern. He demands answers, but Soleya is too exhausted to explain anything. Soleya's father approaches her bedside, his voice full of sympathy and concern. He is trying to figure out what went wrong. His words are soft, but his expression betrays a hidden sense of guilt for not having protected her. Soleya tries to make sense of what happened, but her head is in chaos. She remembers that the tea she drank was strangely bitter. Her heart is full of suspicion, but her strength does not allow her to analyze it further. Gray leans over her and questions her again, his voice shaking with emotion. He wants to know who could have hurt her. His concern makes Soleya feel warm in her chest, despite her own helplessness. Tears begin to stream down Soli's face as she recalls her past training. She blames herself for giving up on trying to become stronger. Her pain and despair tear her apart inside, but along with this, a desire to fight awakens. In her weakened state, Soleya realizes that it is time for a change. She promises herself not to give up again and to find a way to regain control of her life. Her violet eyes, despite the tears, burn with new hope. Gray taunts Soleya with a sly grin, implying that her frail body won't be able to handle push-ups. He radiates smugness, clearly enjoying her silent reaction. Soleya, sitting on a chair with a neck pillow, glares at Gray in irritation. He, however, continues to mock her, calling her weak and unable to handle even a simple exercise. Gray complains that Soleya no longer responds to his provocations. A feeling of emptiness arises within him because her silence destroys his usual pleasure in verbal exchange. Enraged, Soleya calls Gray crazy when he suddenly hits her in the head. Her outraged scream fills the room, sparking a new round of tension. Soleya's father appears, staring at Gray. He demands an explanation, outraged that someone dared to hit his daughter. The atmosphere becomes even more tense. Gray realizes with bewilderment that Soleya's father had been watching the whole scene. Soleya is in shock. She thought he was long gone, but it turns out he was there all along. The father accuses Gray of inappropriate behavior. Gray, in his defense, claims that he only lightly touched Soleya. However, the father remains firm in condemning him. Soleya, irritated by the argument, demands that they leave the room and continue the discussion outside. She can't stand their loud fights by her side. Gray tries to calm Soleya down, convincing her to rest while he takes care of her father. It's clear that he's trying not to let the situation escalate. The father does not calm down and accuses Soli of rudeness. Gray, in turn, reproaches his father for being unfair to his sister. The conflict escalates into an emotional exchange of reproaches. Gray confidently raises his hand, pointing out the discipline problem. much to his father's outrage. His sarcasm indicates defiance, and his facial expression hints at a hidden conflict and the emotional intensity to come. Soleya is amused by the popcorn situation. She sees Gray's behavior as a further manifestation of his insolence, mockingly pointing out how he provokes her father with his defiant behavior. Soli's father is furious. He can't take it anymore and hits Gray on the head, scolding him for disobeying. Gray winces in pain, but his attitude shows that he is not going to give up. Soleya assesses the situation, considering what is happening to be serious. She reflects on how those around her would misinterpret family scenes if they were unaware of the true relationship between Gray and his adoptive family. Anna's maid appears at the door with a worried expression on her face. She addresses Soleya, causing her surprise and slight tension, as Soleya is not used to unexpected visitors. Anne shares her suspicions, reminding Soleya of her rapidly deteriorating health. This causes a wave of anxiety in the girl, hinting at a secret she would rather keep hidden. Soleya notices Anne's nervous look, which makes her tense. She doesn't understand exactly what caused the maid to react that way, but she begins to suspect that the secret might have been revealed. Suddenly, Anne lifts the hem of her robe, revealing what she had been hiding. This shocks Soli, and she realizes that her fears may be confirmed. Soleya stood frozen in fear. Her helplessness became evident, and she begged Anne not to reveal what could change everything in their lives. The maid hands her a book with an exquisite drawing. Anna's words confirm that she found what she was looking for. Soleya looks at her in amazement, not understanding where this will lead. Soleya discovers a strange book with an intriguing cover. She is curious to know what secret is hidden inside, while a mysterious hand appears nearby, increasing the tension. The book's cover depicts a man and a woman in a romantic pose. The title alludes to an unusual story involving the Duchess, which makes Soleya wonder about the content and purpose of this book. The heroine discovers that her weakness is due to reading at night, which causes her fatigue. Her companion decides to take on the responsibility of reading to help Soleya maintain her strength. Soleya looks doubtfully at her assistant as she begins to read the book with great enthusiasm. Her confusion increases when her assistant confidently opens the first chapter. The book's description is captivating and transports the reader into a romantic atmosphere where a story about a forbidden encounter between two people unfolds under the starry sky. Soleya becomes more and more immersed in what is happening. The assistant, blushing, reads the passages enthusiastically, causing confusion and surprise in Soli. He wonders why the girl is trying so hard and reading with genuine passion. Soleya reflects on how she herself is not worth the effort and wonders why her partner appreciates the book so much, as if she sees something special in it that she lacks. His gaze fills with bright envy as he notices his assistant's sincere pleasure. This feeling seems strange and new to him, making him think about his emotions. An unexpected question from her assistant, who notices her mood, puts Solo in an awkward position. She tries to joke around to hide her embarrassment and not reveal her true thoughts. Soleya decides to end the conversation, considering the situation a misunderstanding. She asks to forget what happened, trying to protect her feelings from future arguments. Soleya remembers losing her memory, but is happy that her family now surrounds her with care. She reflects that she now feels supported, even though she herself feels weak after the exhausting physical exercise. The assistant, with a kind smile, tells Soleya that strength does not come from push-ups, but from the love of those around her. This moves the girl, but makes her think about her physical form. Soleya sadly realizes that her efforts in training were in vain. She begins to feel stupid, wondering how everyone sees her from the outside. Gray appears concerned about Soleya's condition. He persistently advises her not to torture herself with hunger and kindly brings her soup to keep her strength up. When Soleya agrees to eat, Gray patiently feeds her, explaining that the food has already cooled and is now perfectly edible. Soleya appears confused by his attention, finding it strange. The girl asks where Herman has disappeared to, but Gray explains that he is busy with magic lessons. Her obsession with studying confuses Gray, but he respects her choice. Gray advises Soleya to be more careful with her training, reminding her that the right approach is more important than the amount of effort. He promises to help her if she wants to continue. Soleya jokingly reproaches Gray that after his instructions, she now feels even more privileged because he takes such good care of her. Gray is irritated by her response because he was sincerely trying to help. His sincerity surprises Soleya, and for the first time she begins to wonder about his feelings. Eventually, Gray and Soleya are left alone in a warm and cozy environment, lost in their thoughts. Their exchange of jokes and worries creates a touching atmosphere. Soleya, who has recovered from her illness thanks to a visit from a doctor, is sitting on her bed with her hands on her knees. She reflects on her gratitude and her desire to thank her father for his care, while looking out the window with a slight smile. Her maid, upon hearing of Soleya's desire to meet her father, runs out delighted to tell him the news. She is glad that the gentleman is happy to see his daughter, because their encounters have become rare. A maid, running through long corridors, collides with another maid. They comment that Soleya wants to meet her father. One of them stresses the importance of keeping order in the house, but both are in a hurry with the news. Soleya sits by the door, waiting for permission to enter. She thinks about how much her father works for her well-being. Light streams in through the windows, creating an atmosphere of warmth and care in the room. Upon meeting her father, Soleya shares her gratitude for his efforts. She is embarrassed that he spends so much money on her treatment, but wants to show him how important his support is to her. The father reassures Soleya that the costs of her health are insignificant. His soft voice and affection help her feel more secure. He casually corrects her thoughts about her financial stability. He jokes that he could bring a whole team of doctors to take care of her health. His warm gaze and subtle smile make Soleya think about how much he loves her. During dinner, her father reminds her not to worry about money and advises her to take care of herself. His words penetrate deep into Soleya's heart, provoking in her a feeling of gratitude and love. Soleya stands by the window, thinking about the warmth she has felt since she came here. Her thoughts are filled with gratitude, and she decides that she must find a way to thank her father for his kindness. She steps out into the garden, surrounded by blooming roses, and ponders how exactly she can express her gratitude. The rays of the sun illuminate her face, enhancing the sense of peace and determination to do something special for her father. Soleya stands in a garden with red roses, holding a flower in her hands. She ponders the gift, hoping it will be received with warmth. Her gaze is filled with sadness, but hope shines in her eyes. She walks through the luxurious corridor of the palace. The sound of her footsteps echoes around, creating a tense atmosphere. She senses someone's presence behind the door and decides to check who is there. Looking inside, Soleya notices that her father is talking about her future. He proposes to her to marry the Marquise's son, promising her a profitable political deal, which provokes her internal protest. The man adds with a smile that this union will bring strategic channels to the family. Soleya hears this and understands that her feelings and desires do not matter to them. As she enters the room, she feels cheated. The men at the table laugh, discussing her fate as if she were a commodity. She realizes that her trust in her father was in vain. Anger takes hold of her. She squeezes the rose so hard that her hands are cut by the thorns. Blood drips onto the petals, reflecting her pain and disappointment. A flash of anger gives way to determination. She stomps on the rose, crushing it beneath her heel, symbolically breaking the connection with family expectations. Sitting in an embrace, Soleya remembers her new world, reminiscent of the Middle Ages. Her gaze is directed nowhere. She feels boredom and melancholy. She finds no joy in this life. She dreams of ending it all and returning home to the modern world, where wealth and freedom await her. The thought of winning $1 billion strengthens her resolve. Thinking about her family, she realizes that she can't trust them. The framed photo reminds her of the past, but to her it's just a symbol of lost trust and disappointment. Soleya, sitting in a luxurious room, ponders how to logically resolve the current situation. Her gaze falls on the newspaper lying nearby. The realization of something important puts her on alert. Staring at the glowing journal, Soleya wonders if it can be used to record events that are about to happen. Her thoughts are interrupted by a sudden burst of inspiration. Soleya panics and wonders if she will have enough time to become stronger and cope with the difficulties ahead. However, a flash of understanding gives her new hope and determination. As she looks at the pen and the diary, she wonders if there could be another way to use the magical object. Soleya feels unsure, but realizes that no one has tried to repeat her actions. Lost in her thoughts, Soleya comes to the conclusion that the book's magic influences how others perceive it. She wonders what those who possess magic will see if they open this diary. Herman, who is in the same room, attracts her attention. Soleya decides she can help and asks him a direct question related to magic to test his knowledge. She remembers how Herman often stays in the room after class and now understands why he seems so exhausted. Magic proves to be a serious challenge for him. Herman responds coldly and cautiously, which surprises Soleya. She comments internally that his caution is unjustified since no one is going to steal his knowledge and skills. Soleya shows Herman the magic feather. His reaction is ambiguous, he is surprised, and does not understand why she shows him this ancient object. Finally, she hands him the diary, confident that she will be able to uncover its secrets. The magical aura of the object causes slight tension, but at the same time promises new discoveries. Soleya anxiously picks up a mysterious book covered in magical symbols. Her thoughts are filled with anxiety. She is afraid that the book will take her back to the world of the novel. She hopes this won't happen, but she is already preparing for the worst. Realizing the risk, Soleya decides to take action. Her face reflects confusion, but she believes she can find a way out. Her prayer is simple, that her actions work, because Herman is the only one who can help her thanks to his knowledge of magic. Herman finds the book and realizes it is a diary. His calmness contrasts sharply with Soleya's enthusiasm, who is clearly overwhelmed with joy at having the diary in her hands, believing that her words could make a difference. Soleya, beaming with happiness, sees hope in the fact that Herman has actually noticed the diary. She begins to explain how important the notes taken there are and is convinced that they will shed light on her plight. Leafing through the diary, Herman realizes that they are Madame Remshi's secret notes. When he asks her if Soleya wrote them herself, she is shocked. Her gaze darkens and her emotions turn into a complex mix of fear and irritation. Soleya is boiling inside and feels her patience reaching its limit. Her thoughts are filled with sarcasm. She is outraged by how people can waste their lives on such boring things as keeping diaries when there are more important tasks in the world. Soleya tries to snatch the book from Herman's hands, but he manages to get a glimpse of its contents. She assures him that this is a mistake and that the book does not belong to him, even though she showed it to him earlier. The atmosphere is tense, and Herman sneers. Herman suspects that the text in the book is her own work. Soleya justifies herself by saying that it belongs to another woman, Madame Remish. There is irritation in her voice, but Herman remains skeptical. Herman is not pleased with Soleya's behavior, reminds her of the rules of etiquette, and asks her not to bother him anymore. He hints at her strange behavior after losing her memory, but says he is not interested in her fantasies. Noticing Herman's coldness, Soleya decides to leave the room. She comments that it was a mistake to ask him for help, and, containing her emotions, she puts the book away to leave. When Soleya touches the book, something strange happens. Herman notices an unusual glow and a magical barrier around the object. He is stunned, wondering what this power is. Soleya falls, but quickly excuses herself, saying that she doesn't know what happened. She claims that she was going to leave so as not to disturb him. Herman looks at the book with suspicion. Herman asks why he put magic in the book. Soleya avoids giving a direct answer but deduces that he is trying to hide something important, perhaps even scandalous. Herman goes on to reproach her that such a hobby could ruin his family's reputation. His words are harsh and he accuses her of being reckless in seeing a threat to her status. Soleya insists that she didn't write the book and wonders why he's so persistent. Her voice is full of pride and resentment. She looks him confidently in the eyes. Soleya accuses Herman of always being cold towards others, especially Madame Remish. She recalls how he justified his actions out of concern for his reputation, but his words challenge her views. Herman explains in a slightly mocking tone that for him, reputation is the basis of everything. His face shows arrogance and his words convey confidence, as if he controls everything around him. He reprimands Soleya for her inappropriate behavior and demands that she not dishonor the honor of his family. The girl is visibly irritated. Her thoughts are filled with protest against his moralizing. Soleya, holding the book, recalls how she came to him for help. She realizes her mistake, considering herself stupid, because Herman arrogantly stepped on her book, showing disdain. Soleya is overcome with shock when she realizes that Herman has stepped on the book. This act intensifies her internal conflict, forcing her to think about his attitude towards her. She tries to understand the situation and realizes that she herself cannot even hold the book completely. However, unlike Herman, only the edge of her shoe touches the object. The girl understands that Herman's actions were deliberately demonstrating his superiority. She concludes that his attempts to write or speak are not justified in this confrontation. Soleya watches as Herman continues his behavior, paying no attention to her feelings. He shows no remorse for his actions and emphasizes his indifference. Soleya, stunned by his indifference, turns around, realizing how much she had underestimated the situation. She begins to see Herman as more than just a brother. Suddenly, she calls him by his name, Herman. There is a note of understanding and determination in her voice, as if the nickname has a new meaning for her. Herman demands that Soleya take off her shoes, wanting to make sure of something important. His confusion and persistence create an atmosphere of tension between them, making her wonder about his intentions. Soleya tries to help Herman by taking off his shoes. However, her actions irritate him and he asks her why she behaves this way. Their interaction becomes tense and emotional. Herman loses his patience trying to calm Soleya down. His frightened face conveys concern, because he clearly doesn't understand what she is planning. Soleya angrily demands that he give her his leg. She holds a pen in her hand, and her determined look makes Herman feel helpless against her persistence. Herman is stunned and doesn't understand what is happening to Soleya. She continues to do something with her leg, clearly with no intention of stopping despite his objections. Soleya is concentrating on her work using a pen. Herman is shocked by her actions and thinks she has lost her mind. The atmosphere is tense, but the girl's intentions remain a mystery. The tension gives way to an unexpected ease. Soleya and Herman begin to laugh, and their serious discussion turns into a moment of mutual understanding and trust. Herman, a little embarrassed, begins to accuse Soleya of constantly bothering him. She makes excuses, but the situation turns comical, keeping the interaction warm. Soleya invites Herman to write his name in a book while holding her leg. He finds it strange, but she insists that he do it as soon as possible. Herman is outraged and believes this is an attempt to damage his reputation. Soleya insists that it is necessary, but his doubts continue to grow. Soleya finally calms Herman down by explaining that it is just part of her plan. He reluctantly agrees, and the conflict is resolved, leaving a slight comic tone. Soleya, lost in doubt, reflects on Herman and his actions. She decides to change her approach and prepare a backup plan, realizing the importance of her decisions. She has transformed, radiating a new combination of beauty and wisdom. Inside her, there is a sincere desire to help Herman, to feel his pain and understand his state of mind. After losing her memory, Soleya decides to rethink her life. She intends to leave her old weaknesses behind, regain her strength, and overcome her feelings of guilt towards her loved ones. Soleya shares her desire to embrace her siblings' past, understanding that preserving family histories means protecting their legacy and strengthening the bond between them. Herman, surprised, asks why Soleya asks to show her her legs. Soleya answers simply and sincerely, stating that she finds them beautiful, surprising Herman. Embarrassed, Soleya realizes that her words came out differently than she intended. Herman shares his pain about the time he lived without the ability to wear normal shoes. In response, Soleya smiles and admits that she admires her legs, seeing them as a sign of the difficulties she has overcome. This touching confession moves Herman deeply. Herman, staring thoughtfully into space, reflects on Soleya's words. He doesn't understand why she insists so much on confessing, but he begins to sense her sincerity. Soleya, burning with shame inside, asks Herman to listen to her words. It is important to her that he understands her intentions and her true feelings. Soleya explains that she just wants to help him with the leg exercises and adds that they are beautiful. Her care and sincerity inspire respect and gratitude in Herman. Soleya addresses her interlocutor in a playful manner, creating a light atmosphere. Her bright smile and wit highlight her playful personality. She is trying to cheer herself up. In a luxurious living room, Soleya and Herman discuss an important but difficult topic. Both seem focused, but refuse to delve deeper into the subject, preferring to leave it in the past. Soleya, apologizing for her actions, tries to support Herman. Her words are sincere and caring, but he is lost in his thoughts, feeling restless inside. Gray, covering his face with his hand, suddenly realizes something important. His emotions are hard to hide. Surprise and doubt are reflected in every gesture and look. Gray wonders about beauty and its essence as he watches the sunset. His thoughts go beyond the ordinary, highlighting his profound nature. Soleya notices that Gray is acting strangely. Her concern grows because she doesn't understand what made him think that. Gray seems confused. In an unexpected situation, Gray finds himself without shoes. This surprises those around him, but he himself is embarrassed and tries to explain it. In the garden, the artist draws Herman, but he categorically refuses to show his legs. Soleya is clever in putting Gray in this strange situation. Soleya explains that Herman did not want to reveal the secret of his beauty, and Gray, by taking off his shoes, only added to the comic aspect. However, Soleya is happy that she has brightened up the atmosphere. Herman is outraged and condemns Soleya's actions. Gray feels uncomfortable, but realizes he is trapped. The situation brings a smile, despite the embarrassment of all involved. Gray, irritated, notes that Herman is always treated with respect, while he himself is only called Gray. This makes him wonder why his younger brother has such a soft spot for Herman. Soleya is irritated by the constant questions about her legs. She accuses Herman of being the first to give in to her interest by showing his legs. Gray, sensing the tension rising, tries to persuade Herman to show his legs to resolve this awkward situation. His grim expression only emphasizes his weariness with what is happening. Herman is lost in his thoughts, wondering why he should comply with Soleya's strange requests. His confusion increases as he remembers her strange request. Soleya continues to think about Herman's legs, admiring their external beauty. Her strange obsession causes bewilderment and even mild indignation in others. Gray, Herman, and Soleya discuss their obsession with feet. Herman thinks their actions are absurd, while Soleya sincerely finds something sublime in them. The next morning, Herman notices a strange movement in the garden and heads there in surprise, unaware of what awaits him. Soli's gray-haired father and the little girl herself are in the spotlight. The father sits with his legs bare, and the artist enthusiastically depicts them next to him. The father looks at Soleya with a slight smile and asks her why she is so obsessed with his feet. His calmness and interest make her shiver. Soleya reverently explains that legs symbolize support and strength, that they contain the greatness and loneliness of the past. Her words touch those around her with their sincerity. Herman is pondering Soli's oddities. He finds her behavior mysterious, especially her attention to his legs, which leaves him a little puzzled and uncomfortable. He's not sure how to react to this. The next day, Soleya behaves even more unusual and forces others to show their legs. Herman simply watches this, trying to understand what motivates the girl and why she behaves so strangely. Herman begins to suspect that Soleya is obsessed with some idea. He considers the situation to be beyond reasonable limits, and all efforts are directed towards getting her to participate in this unusual experiment. Herman recalls instances where injuries changed people and formed strange habits. He believes Soleya is driven by an obsession that won't go away without intervention, and ponders what the right thing to do is. For Herman, family always comes first, and he decides to find out what is going on. With a firm determination, he turns to Soleya to find out how to help her overcome this obsession. Herman finds Soleya, who is training despite the ban. Her persistence and determination leave him with a mixture of surprise and irritation. He tries to convince her, but understands that it is not easy. Gray reprimands Soleya for her stubbornness and reminds her of the consequences of her injuries. She objects that she is willing to go all the way, even if it means going to the doctor again. Their discussion becomes emotional and tense. Conflict erupts between Soleya and Gray, but deep down they both care for each other. Gray tries to protect the girl, but she stands firm, determined to continue training. Still, Gray decides to teach Soleya a lesson, insisting on the need to take a correct approach to training. He uses force to show her the importance of taking health and safety into account. Soleil understands that Gray is right, but she is not ready to admit it openly. Her attitude towards training becomes more serious, and she promises to work on herself while accepting help from her friends. Gray demands that Soleil bend over more tightly, but she resists, complaining of pressure in her head. Herman watches the argument from afar, clearly shocked by what is happening. Soleil is outraged that Gray's behavior is causing her hair, which she spent half an hour on, to suffer. In response, she accuses Gray of being arrogant because of his wealth, which only fuels their feud. Herman abruptly intervenes, pointing out the inappropriate behavior of both of them. He appears tense as he loudly declares that he is going to show his legs to Soleil, with the clear intention of ending the conflict. Soleil is taken aback by Herman's abrupt reaction, but Gray continues to argue. Herman demonstratively bares one leg to prove his point, using magic to bring out its shine. Gray and Soleil are baffled by Herman's actions. Soleil begins to doubt that all is well with Herman. Herman, in turn, stresses the need for an intervention to help Soleil regain her memory. After a moment of confusion, Herman kneels in front of Soleil, his expression becoming more reserved. Soleil watches his actions intently, waiting for an explanation. Herman shows off his legs, which shine with a magical light. He claims that they are the perfect legs that Soleil was looking for, highlighting their perfection. Soleil looks thoughtfully at Herman's demonstration, clearly confused by what is happening. She tries to find the words to explain her feelings, but it proves difficult. Herman watches Soleil warily, waiting for her reaction. Gray, meanwhile, wonders what could have caused such a situation and why Herman's legs were the center of attention. Soleil eventually notices that Herman's legs have actually changed. She suggests that they have become more massive. Herman is perplexed to understand how this could have happened in just a few days, which raises even more questions for everyone. Soleil, noticing the changes in Herman, expresses her disappointment and points out his weakness. She suggests that he improve his condition by practicing writing with his feet. Herman, though surprised by the idea, is forced to agree. Soleil proudly shows Gray her legs, comparing them to his. Despite Gray's confusion, she is confident that her argument is irrefutable, leaving him slightly surprised. Soleil and Gray laugh at each other's jokes about legs. There is a friendly atmosphere between them. They hug each other without taking the situation seriously. Their attitude clearly lifts both of their spirits. Herman, standing to the side, was completely perplexed. He doesn't understand how they could have come up with such strange competitions. He thinks what is happening is complete madness. Despite his doubts, Herman stubbornly carries out Soleil's task. He leans over the ground, writing with his foot, feeling a mixture of shame and determination. This moment became a great test for him. Herman wonders why he is doing such a ridiculous thing. He realizes that this is a completely unbecoming occupation for an aristocrat, but he has a reason to continue. Looking at Soleil, Herman remembers how impressed he was by her perfect legs a few days ago. His admiration for her appearance only increases his desire to live up to her expectations. Herman becomes convinced that only he is capable of understanding and pleasing Soleil. He decides to perfect his writing skills with his foot and throws himself into the process with total dedication. Soleil collapses from exhaustion after another exercise, accompanied by a loud countdown. She continues to maintain the competitive spirit with all her might, testing the limits of her capabilities. Lying on the ground, Soleil laughs and declares that she can't take it anymore. Her tiredness and emotion express the joy and sincerity of the moment, showing how unusual and close this friendship has become. Soleil examines the lottery ticket, which she keeps carefully in her locket, understanding its meaning. Remembering that it is her symbol of hope, she decides to always keep it with her, since her future remains uncertain. Lying on the ground, Soleil reflects that training cannot be stopped, even if she is busy with other things, such as improving her relationship with Herman. She decides that it is time to act and return to her goals. Herman unexpectedly arrives at Soleil's house. His appearance causes surprise and joy in the girl. She realizes that he has been waiting for this moment and is ready for a conversation that can clarify many things in their relationship. Herman shows Soleil the letter and asks her if she wrote it. His serious tone makes her wonder how exactly that letter ended up in his hands, since she had asked the maid to deliver it a long time ago. Soleya recognizes in the letter the note she wrote to Herman. She remembers how they exchanged letters and realizes that this message from her past can change a lot in her present. Herman comments on her handwriting with some mockery, comparing it to that of a child. He teases her for her efforts, which adds a playful edge to their conversation, but there is warmth in his tone. Soleya, despite being irritated by Herman's comment, can't help but smile. She decides to play along, assuming that his mockery is his own way of expressing his attention. Herman continues to joke, claiming that he could write the lyrics with his foot and do it better. He implies that his weakness in writing may be due to a lack of training, adding a touch of irony to the conversation. Soleya, hiding her embarrassment, decides to put his words to the test. She challenges Herman, suggesting that it is not at all easy to accomplish this task as easily as he claims. Herman gets down to business, takes off his shoes and tries to write a letter with his foot. This unusual act makes Soli smile. As a result, their conversation turns into a warm and humorous scene that brings them closer together. Herman looks in surprise at the exquisite handwriting Soleya shows him. He is amazed, admiring how much time she must have spent perfecting this skill. Soleya enthusiastically praises Herman for his perfect features. She compares his perfection to unparalleled beauty and grace, including his writing style. Soleya pulls out an old leather-bound journal. She explains that it's hard to control a pencil on old paper, which piques Herman's interest. Herman demonstrates an astonishing skill, claiming that he can now see details down to the tiniest hair. This provokes mixed feelings of admiration and slight embarrassment in Soleya. As Soleya watches this, she begins to feel a strange sense of déjà vu. She remembers something important from her past life, but she cannot wrap her mind around the thought. Using an unusual method, Herman tries to write by holding a pen with his feet. This makes Soleya feel delighted and gives her hope that her long-awaited dream will come true. A flash of understanding comes to Soleya's mind. She realizes that this is her chance to return home. Her gaze is filled with determination and bright light. Herman is confused when his method unexpectedly fails. He tries to understand why something is going wrong and it makes him anxious. Herman and Soleya find the task more difficult than they expected. They argue and try to find a solution together, but emotions overwhelm them both. Tensions reach their peak, but the pair do not give up. Their combined determination fills the atmosphere with drama, leaving hope for success and resolution to come their way. Herman nearly breaks the fragile handle, causing chaos. Soleya falls, pressing her face into the floor. Her despair and screams pierce the room, and Herman, confused, tries to apologize. He realizes he has ruined an important moment. Soleya, with her head bowed, whispers about her pain. She cannot cope with the new reality. Herman watches her suffer, feeling guilty for what happened, but his attempts to correct the situation seem futile. Soleya runs away crying, but at the same time talks about how concentrating on the task before helped her to distract herself. She wonders how she will be able to return home now that she is so lost. She lies on the ground, crying, clutching her dress in her hands, thinking of home. She feels very lonely and sad. Her emotions are overwhelming, making the pain of loss even greater. Herman approaches Soleya and gently places his hand on her head to calm her down. He reminds her that she is already home, trying to comfort her with his presence. Herman realizes the similarity of the situation to the past. He remembers something he had long forgotten, but which seems important. Fragmentary images of the past associated with his kindness emerge in his mind. The image of Duchess Eileen Eden von Virgo appears before his eyes. Her figure symbolizes memories of times gone by, the warmth and kindness he associates with home. He remembers how kind and affectionate the Duchess was during his childhood. However, at that time, he believed that this kindness would not last forever, that the childhood idyll would end sooner or later. It has been a month since Herman arrived at the farm. He admits that he still can't sleep because of anxious thoughts and fear of change, still feeling like an outsider. Unable to even trust the food, believing it might be poisoned, Herman is left mired in doubt and fear, unable to find a way to feel safe or belong there. Herman lies on the floor, cowering in fear and pain, remembering the torment the food causes him. He is afraid of repeating the past, feeling as if his body is tearing itself apart from within. His gaze turns intense as he considers that these experiments may be being performed specifically to awaken the magical abilities that exist in his family. Remembering the checks from his father and stepmother, Herman feels hostile. Every visit from the adults promised new painful experiences. He did everything he could to avoid them. The expectation of the adults in the room filled him with dread. The visits always ended in painful experiments. These memories only increased his mistrust and his pain. Exhausted by hunger and lack of sleep, Herman spends his days in his room, suffering from hunger. He is exhausted both physically and mentally, causing his thoughts to be confused. Herman still decides to get out of bed, feeling how unbearably hungry he is. The hunger becomes overwhelming and forces him to search for food. He notices a cart with provisions and approaches it. Hoping for luck, Herman convinces himself that there is no poisoned food or magic traps there. When he finally finds food, he greedily satisfies his hunger, devouring the food so fast that he can't even speak. A sense of relief is mixed with anxiety. But when he touches the spice box, he triggers a magical trap. The glowing spell frightens him, awakening old fears about adult control. Herman realizes that even food can be part of the trials that are being prepared for him. His internal conflict between hunger and fear continues to grow. The events begin with a powerful explosion that engulfs the building. Herman, who has been subjected to magical experiments, finds himself thrown outside. His body convulses and his consciousness sinks into darkness. Herman struggles with the pain caused by cruel magical experiments that heightened his sensitivity. His eyes are clouded, his breathing is labored, and there is chaos everywhere. His condition is critical, but he clings to life. At that moment, a local resident finds Herman in the woods. Seeing the boy, he assumes he is a thief, making his intentions seem threatening. Herman, helpless, remains lying there. A woman with bright red hair comes to the rescue. She takes Herman in her arms, her face reflecting determination. Her sudden appearance stops the dissatisfied man in his tracks. The woman orders a doctor to be called immediately. Her words are full of panic and insistence, but the servants seem to doubt the need for such urgent measures. However, her determination leaves no room for doubt. Herman is in a terrible state. He vomited from the food he ate in haste. His whole body is weakened and horror is written on his face. His physical condition is further aggravated by the dirt and blood. The boy was drenched in tears and other signs of distress. He has difficulty moving and his condition is only getting worse. He appears to be on the verge of exhaustion and total despair. The woman hugs Herman tightly, convinced that everything that is happening is unacceptable. Her words convey her intention to save the child at any cost. This is an expression of tenderness and protection. The servants try to convince the woman that they will take care of the child, but she firmly replies that she will not entrust him to anyone else. Her determination is visible in every gesture. The scene emphasizes her connection with Herman. She calls him her son, making it clear that her feelings for him are strong and genuine. Her words sound like a promise she intends to keep. The woman desperately calls out to Herman, trying to stop him from falling. Her face expresses horror and helplessness, and she tries to hold on as best she can despite the danger surrounding her. Herman, looking at the woman, realizes that time has passed too quickly before he could open his eyes again. The landscape around us seems calm, contrasting with the tension. The woman greets Herman with a warm smile and asks if he is awake. The light of the setting sun illuminates her face, creating an atmosphere of comfort and care that touches the heart. Herman is confused and wonders where he should go now. There is uncertainty on his face and tears glistening in his eyes. The shadows of the past weigh heavily on him. Herman remembers how he was often abandoned after being used. In his heart, he prepares for the fact that he will have to find his place again. His shoulders seem slumped with fatigue. The woman, with tears in her eyes, assures Herman that she is home now. Her voice sounds sincere and her words seem to embrace him, making him feel safe. A majestic house stands before them. Herman sees it for the first time and feels a warmth that penetrates his heart. The woman confirms that this is her home, her place of rest. Herman, looking at his new surroundings, remains silent, digesting what has been said. He is trying to come to terms with the fact that this is really his new reality. There is a glimmer of hope in his eyes. Herman is lying in bed and a woman asks him if he feels better. She looks after him carefully, creating an atmosphere of trust. He feels that for the first time someone genuinely cares about him. Herman's father smiles with relief at his recovery. He jokingly asks Herman to warn him in the future if he wants to go into hiding, creating a warm moment of reconciliation. Herman feels that those around him ignore his actions. He is tormented by guilt over his mistakes, noticing how everyone prefers to ignore his flaws. This provokes in him a contradictory mix of shame and despair. Herman admits that he stole food to survive. He feels insignificant, comparing himself to a rat. His distrust of others was the result of loneliness and fears accumulated over many years. Herman expects reproaches inside him, but instead he hears silence. He finds it hard to believe that no one is judging him. Confusion and bewilderment mingle within him, intensifying his internal conflict. The painful words he heard about himself in the past permeate Herman's consciousness. He remembers being called useless and talentless, which only increases his feelings of insignificance. Instead of accusations, however, he feels a warm touch. It suddenly replaces all negative thoughts. At that moment, Herman feels an unexpected acceptance and care that awakens hope in him. Herman's father asks about his condition, carefully placing his hand on his head. Herman feels uncomfortable, but he also feels calm and security growing in his heart. Herman, barely containing his emotions, replies that he is fine. However, deep inside, for the first time, he feels the warmth that has been missing for so long. This makes him feel unusually ashamed. Herman recalls a time in the past when the Duchess, despite its filthy state, called this house her home. These words sank deep into his soul, giving him a sense of belonging. Consider Soleil, the Duchess's biological daughter, who has everything: inheritance, status, and support. Herman feels the difference between their destinies, but he does not envy them. Herman realizes that despite all the difficulties, he has found his place. His father's care fills his heart with light, giving him the strength to accept himself as he is. Soleil is confused, aware of a strange feeling that something is wrong around her. She tries to understand her feelings, but fear and uncertainty overwhelm her, leaving more questions than answers. The memory of how much the Hetzrog had frightened her stirred her feelings. She realizes that in his presence, her anxiety only intensifies, filling her soul with a mixture of uncertainty and anticipation. Herman notices her confused look, which causes him great concern. In her eyes, he sees a reflection of his own fears, which haunt him. To fix the situation, Herman casts a time spell in her room. He tries to protect her and understand what exactly is scaring and hurting her so much. Herman delves into his memories and realizes what it was like to spend a night in fear. He feels responsible for sparing her such experiences. He tries to comfort Soleil by telling her that she is home and that she can feel safe. His words convey sincerity and a desire to be a support for her. Soleil, however, feels overcome by despair. She remembers her lost money. Her emotions change from melancholy to indignation, awakening in her determination. Herman ponders her words, trying to understand what exactly she needs. He promises to do everything he can to help her, his thoughts focused on her happiness. As he says goodbye, he promises himself to be there and support her, no matter what. Herman feels compelled to keep this promise, no matter how difficult the road may be. Soleil decides to act on her own. She concludes that the only way out for her is perseverance and strength. The determination is evident in her gaze, full of inner strength and confidence. Soleil reflects on her situation. She has exactly 1 year to recover her earnings, but she has already lost a whole month. She is overcome with anxiety because time is running out and the need to return becomes more and more evident. In her thoughts, Soleil realizes the danger she runs by being noticed. Her inner voice reminds her that she can't trust anyone, even if someone shows her kindness. There are hidden motives behind the smiles of those around you. Tired of thinking, Soleil tries to distract herself, but is overcome by someone who disturbs her peace. Her mood is mixed, between tiredness and the unexpectedness of the intervention. Gray comes across as a brilliant hero. His confidence and calmness lift your spirits, but his unexpected behavior makes you wonder what he wants. He starts the conversation by emphasizing his energy. Gray notices Solea's strange state and offers to help her. Solea assures her that she is fine, but her answer does not convince Gray, who shows obvious concern for her well-being. Gray says that he is her brother and as a relative he cannot remain indifferent. There is a sincerity and concern in his words, which puts Solea in a difficult position. Her thoughts become confused again. Suddenly, Gray runs away, leaving Solea shocked. His behavior seems strange and even unpredictable, which only adds to her confusion. She remains standing there, confused. Gray stands among other people, clearly trying to distract himself from his own feelings. His demeanor in front of them seems calm, but there is a hidden tension in him. New faces greet Solea and try to involve her in the ball game. They are friendly, but their excessive enthusiasm makes her feel uncomfortable. The ball ends up in Solea's hands and her face lights up with surprise. Her thoughts scream in shock and confusion. How did she get caught up in this? The situation becomes more and more absurd, which only makes her feel helpless. Solea explains the new game by comparing it to Knockout. Her enthusiasm causes confusion among those around her. Despite the uncertainty, the idea seems like an interesting and useful exercise, although the rules are becoming more and more complicated. The girl accepts the game, considering it excellent training. She adds one condition: knocked-out players can attack from behind the line. This has sparked the team's interest, although some remain skeptical. Preparations for the game begin. One of the participants jokes about his physical condition, and Solea confidently states that the ball must be strong to break his bones. His confidence evokes mixed emotions. During the game, the man argues with Solea about the rules, pointing out inaccuracies in the interpretation. The girl counterattacks by adding more rules, which causes a heated argument between the participants. One of the players complains about the constant changes in the rules. Solea, supported by Gray, convinces everyone that her ideas make the game more interesting. The man reluctantly agrees. The man, outraged, realizes that Gray unexpectedly supports Solea. The participants begin to joke about the situation, and the tension gives way to laughter. An argument over the rules turns into a friendly fight. Herman notices that Solea is getting too carried away by the process. However, the game continues and becomes more and more fun. Solea plays actively, full of energy and enthusiasm. Her enthusiasm is contagious to others. The game gains momentum despite constant disputes over the rules. The game ends with friendly laughter. Solea, pleased, suggests trying a new strategy. Her enthusiasm brings the team together, creating an atmosphere of fun and competition. During a pause, the boy, smiling, comments that someone might think Solea likes to train. She laughs in response, confirming his assumption. Solea remembers her school years. She really enjoyed her studies, but what saddens her the most is that she did not finish the last year. She is sure that the impressions would have been even brighter if the studies had continued. She looks back with nostalgia at the people at the restaurant where she used to work in the kitchen. Back then, she still had friends, and although the work was hard, life seemed less difficult than it is now. However, one day, some friends came to her house and the loan shark showed up. This event became a point of no return for her, destroying the remains of her confidence and peace. Solea decides to quit her job and cut off all contact with these people. She doesn't want anyone from the past to continue interfering in her life. Solea suggests playing the children's game, The Hibiscus Flower Has Bloomed. Although it may seem a bit strange, she assures that it will be fun if everyone participates. She enthusiastically explains the rules of the game while holding the ball in her hands. Her energy and enthusiasm are contagious to those around her. It seems that a children's game can really bring this unusual group together. When someone starts to hesitate, Solea simplifies the task and chooses a different flower to play with. This choice creates a light and informal atmosphere, encouraging everyone to participate. Solea, with a sparkle in her eyes, begins the game. Her passion for what is happening captivates, and even the most skeptical participants begin to immerse themselves in the atmosphere of childlike spontaneity. However, not everything is so easy. Some participants begin to complain about dishonesty. In response, Solea takes on the role of judge, restoring order and calling on everyone to continue. Suddenly, the man intervenes, firmly demanding that the rules be respected and the game continue. He supports Soleil, and Gray, despite resistance, agrees. Everyone's energy reaches a climax, uniting them. A bright, red-haired Soleil and a man are quietly arguing outside a majestic building. Soleil reproaches him for using that word, but the boy categorically denies it. There is tension between them, creating an atmosphere of hidden irony. Herman notes that Soleil was on the verge of death yesterday, but he is surprised by her joy today. Her gaze is filled with reflection and slight shame. Soleil irritably wonders why Gray is provoking her into a fight again. His tense expression highlights her inner turmoil. She makes it clear that she is too busy at the moment to be distracted by his words. Alaman, trying to start a conversation, is met with Soleil's determination, who walks away, stating that she now wants to focus on training. Her astonished look shows how unexpected her words are. Herman, with a mocking smile, makes a caustic comment, calling their actions senseless. He remains in the shadows, his face illuminated by a cold light, which increases the tension between the characters. Gray steps into the situation, gently reprimanding Herman for his harsh words. His calm, confident tone attempts to ease the tension, but the tension remains, as if a hidden storm is about to erupt. Suddenly, Herman covers his face with his hands, as if hiding something important. He looks confused, and there is an air of strange uneasiness around him. The soft light and the flowers create a contrast with his emotions. Herman is shocked and confused, as if he suddenly realized something important about himself. His expression turns startled, creating a moment full of intrigue and mystery. Soleil, Gray, and the other knights actively try to boost morale by loudly encouraging each other. The energy of the scene increases, adding motivation and tension to the narrative. Herman, by uttering a mysterious phrase, falls once again under the blow of fate. Energetic and determined, Soleil seems to put an end to it, creating a tense and dynamic ending to their interaction. Soleil, laughing, runs away from Herman, who tries to catch up with her. She mocks him, implying that he won't be able to catch her. Herman, exhausted, hides behind a tree, trying to catch his breath, but inside he is already thinking of how to turn the situation to his advantage. Herman understands that to win, he needs to change tactics. His smile becomes mysterious and determination flashes in his eyes. He decides to use magic to put Soleil at a disadvantage and take control of the situation. Herman activates a magic circle surrounded by glowing runes. Soleil and the other participants in the game, including Gray, are shocked by his sudden use of magic. They don't understand what he's up to, but they feel that their chances have been greatly reduced. Herman's magic creates a barrier, increasing the distance between him and other players. Soleil indignantly exclaims that this is unfair. She says that magic makes the game unfair and that they can't even get close to him. Herman, as usual, responds with a hint of mockery, claiming that magic is part of the game. Soleil replies by reproaching him for his cunning and calling him a cheat. Gray watches the discussion in silence, waiting for the right moment. Soleil, irritated, finds the ball and throws it to Herman, interrupting his triumph. Herman is shocked and can't seem to believe that someone dares to attack him. The magic around him begins to dissipate. Herman, clenching his fists in anger, wonders how Soleil could have thrown the ball at him. His aura turns sinister, and Soleil realizes that her provocation may have been too risky, but she doesn't back down, ready for a new phase of the game. From the balcony, the father watches what is happening with a slight smile. He is interested in how young people deal with such emotional situations. He notes that it is rare for Herman to participate in games with others. Herman, Soleil, Gray, and the rest of the players return to the game, now interacting more actively. Each of them tries to use their skills to win, including Herman, who has softened after the recent conflict. The father decides to prepare the room so that in case of rain, the youngsters can continue playing inside. He is glad that Herman has finally found a way to spend time with other people, although before this he always kept to himself. Soleil, a girl with bright red hair and purple eyes, suddenly meets the gaze of a mysterious man. This makes her feel embarrassed and worried about how to behave. A gray-haired man holds a flower that has bloomed near his window, remembering something important. His gaze fills with warmth, but it changes abruptly when he hears that someone has harmed his daughter. A man writes a letter to Soleya. He reminds her of the need to take care of herself, but hints that if her destiny is linked to a certain marquis, danger awaits her. A feeling of happiness mixed with pain arises in his thoughts, as if something is stuck in his throat. He wonders why happiness is always so fragile. The maid screams in panic, asking why her mistress did this, believing that Soleya no longer needs her. Her words fill the atmosphere with anxiety and uncertainty. In the morning, Soleya, looking relaxed, lazily asks the maid the reason for her concern. She is completely unaware of her feelings, which increases the contrast between their emotions. The maid, desperate, accuses her of buying a new servant, feeling useless. She can barely hold back her tears as Soleya tries to understand her strange behavior. Soleya reacts to the maid's emotions with confusion, not understanding her words. Her expression shows a mix of irritation and surprise, which makes the situation worse. In the castle hall, Soleya meets strangers. One of them offers her to sign a contract addressing her as princess, which creates a tense atmosphere. Herman and Gray appear on the stairs, interrupting what is happening. Their determination raises the question of who dares to interfere in Soleya's affairs. The situation is heating up and foreshadows a conflict. Soleya's father looks sternly at the two men, Herman and Gray, reproaching them for their inappropriate behavior towards his daughter. The tension between the characters increases, adding drama to the atmosphere. The next morning, Soleya greets her father at the front door, trying to understand the reason for his early visit. The father, with a warm smile, reports that everyone was waiting for her to have breakfast together. Herman and Gray appear after their father, which surprises Soleya. She wonders why they are all gathered together and comments that she could have prepared ahead of time if she had been warned. Herman jokingly complains that the long wait has made him hungry. His words are full of humor, but Soleya responds with a cheeky smile, revealing her attitude towards the situation. Soleya decides to express her opinion with a little provocation, showing Herman a gesture he had never seen before. Her smile becomes brighter and her gaze more mocking. Gray quickly guesses the hidden meaning behind her actions, though he doesn't know the exact meaning of the gesture. His mischievous smile betrays his understanding, eliciting a light laugh. Soleya's expression suddenly changes and her gaze becomes sharp and determined. She sarcastically puts Herman in his place, not hiding her anger and sarcasm. The father, observing this interaction, asks what is going on. When he learns that Herman bought a man for Soleya, his surprise turns to bewilderment and he demands an explanation. Herman calmly claims that it was his initiative and that he did it for Soleya. The father is surprised by his determination and unexpected honesty in the situation. Herman explains that he wanted to help Soleya find the one she really needs. His determination to make her happy is evident, despite his shock and confusion. Surrounded by Gray and Herman, Soleya desperately tries to explain that everything is not as they think. Her panic is clearly reflected in her gestures and facial expressions, creating a tense atmosphere. Soleya's father, sitting on the throne, demands that the hooded man raise his head. Seeing him, the father insists that this is a mistake, as the Don he seeks must be someone else. The father demands that the chains be removed from the stranger so that he can examine his legs. This is because he suspects that it is the feet that will help confirm the identity or dispel doubts. Soleya is shocked by the situation and thinks the whole leg thing has become some kind of absurdity. She clearly feels confused and is trying to make sense of what is happening. Herman intervenes to protect Soleya and helps her out of an awkward situation. At this point, the atmosphere becomes tense, but suddenly it turns into relief thanks to the brothers' intervention. Soleya's father expresses his willingness to sign a contract to close the matter, but Soleya realizes that her words have been misinterpreted again. She feels ashamed and confused. The man with a mischievous smile reminds Soleya of the incident where she claimed that no one was there. His calm but sinister tone raises new questions about her past. Soleya, sitting in a majestic pose, denies what was said, claiming that she does not remember anything, including her feelings for anyone. Her voice is determined not to give in to the provocation. The father, after carefully examining the man, declares that his legs are too well cared for Don. Herman assures that he has nothing to hide from his family, to which Soleya tries to intervene again. Soleya explodes with anger, condemning the constant talk about legs and accusing Herman of being too intrusive. Her emotions reach their limits, emphasizing the intensity of passions. Soleya stands in the hallway, her gaze directed towards the distance where the bright light disappears. Her inner voice is full of worries. She feels alone. Her weak gesture seems to want to cling to someone important. In the company of Herman and Gray, light conversation distracts from gloomy thoughts. Herman laughs as he comments on Soleya's strange preferences. His embarrassment makes the atmosphere more sincere, but anxiety remains. At dinner, Soleya tries to cope with the memories that have come flooding back to her. She tells herself that everything is okay, but thoughts of the man whose words once hurt her haunt her. Her heart aches at the memory. The words that promised eternal love come back to her mind, but now those warm moments seem distant and unattainable, which increases her feeling of guilt. Soleya becomes more and more immersed in her experiences. She feels disappointed and hurt, as if she has not lived up to the expectations of others. Her thoughts return to past mistakes, which makes her doubt. Gray interrupts her thoughts and stops her from leaving. His confident voice and steady gaze seem to tell her that she is not alone. His hand on her wrist is a reminder that things can still be fixed. He notices her fears and insecurities and tries to dispel them with his words. He convinces her that the man she is afraid of disappointing is not as strict and cold as she thinks. Gray's words warm her heart. His confidence gives her strength. She begins to believe that mistakes don't matter as much if there's someone willing to help. She takes a step towards her feelings. Soleya remembers that the one she feared was never cruel. These thoughts bring her back to simple but important truths. Strict words do not always mean a lack of love. Her heart fills with warmth. Gray's words and support help her put the past behind her. She is now ready to accept herself and those around her with gratitude and new hope. Soleya jumps out of her chair and quickly leaves the room, leaving a pensive young man at the table. She seems determined, but behind her haste, there is clearly a storm of emotions and hidden pain. The young man turns around confused, trying to understand her words. Alarm appears in his eyes. He begins to suspect that something terrible may have happened in the house. Soleya knocks carefully on the door where her father is. She feels guilty and ashamed. Only the determination in her gaze suggests that an important matter has brought her to him. The father invites her in and with a soft smile offers her a seat. Soleya holds a tray of food in her hands, trying to find a way to express her thoughts despite her nervous tension. She sits across from her father in the luxurious, high-ceilinged living room. Soleya gathers her strength to say what she has been wanting to say for some time, but her voice trembles with emotion. Her father interrupts her warmly, noticing her confusion. His calm tone and humorous remarks lighten the mood. However, behind his words lies the expectation of a frank conversation. The father expresses his hope that his past behavior has not been misinterpreted. He emphasizes that he is not disappointed in her, but only surprised by her actions. His words gently touch his daughter's feelings. Suddenly, Soleya's face freezes in confusion. Her father's words stir up a storm of thoughts in her soul. She looks at him as if trying to understand the hidden meaning of what he said. Her memories come alive with moments when she could guess her father's mood from the slightest signs. She recalls how, as a child, every change in him affected her condition. Soleya recalls her childhood fears. A look from her father, full of anger, made her afraid to touch things that reminded her of her mother. These memories further intensify her internal conflict. There are empty bottles on the table, creating the feeling that someone is drowning in despair or seeking solace in alcohol. The question arises, what has led to this, joy or bitter failure? Soleya's eyes fill with tears as she wonders if this man will eventually abandon her like the others. Her internal monologue reflects a deep vulnerability and fear of loneliness. Alone, Soleya is lost in her thoughts, clasping her hands together. She remembers the grievances and unspoken words that have built up inside her and torment her. Her emotions begin to overwhelm her. In a room filled with elegance, Soleya's father speaks to her calmly. He notes that her anger is caused by a misunderstanding and offers her a decision that could ease her pain. Soleya feels a mix of emotions as she prepares to respond. She mentally tries to gather her thoughts to express everything she has accumulated, realizing that she had no chance to influence what was happening. Her thoughts turn to the injustice that has occurred. She realizes that the cause of the situation does not lie in her actions. Despite this, she feels the need to remain calm. Soleya admits that she is not angry, although her gaze betrays a deep pain. She tries to convince herself and others that she is calm, but inside she feels empty. The atmosphere lightens a little. Her father notes with relief the change in mood. However, the tension remains and he suggests calling someone to help her. Soleya refuses help, saying she can handle it herself. Her voice is firm, but deep inside there is a heaviness that she is not willing to share with others. She takes a step towards independence, assuring that there is no need to worry about her. Her look, full of inner strength, suggests that she has decided to follow her own path. In a richly decorated room, a gray-haired man thinks about Soli. There is doubt in his gaze. He calls her by name, as if he were waiting for an important answer. The atmosphere is filled with silence and anxiety. Soleya, a red-haired girl, hears an unexpected whisper. Her head is spinning, as if her thoughts are trying to escape. She understands that she has witnessed something illegal. In front of her appears a girl who resembles herself, but seems more self-assured. She claims that this is her place, causing Soleya to feel a sense of loss and confusion about what is happening. Soleya feels that the doppelganger's voice sounds exactly like her own, but it belongs to someone else. This thought creates doubts about the reality of everything that is happening. Soleya realizes that the vision is a figment of her imagination, but she can't shake the feeling that what is happening is real. Her mind is torn between awareness of the illusion and the desire for answers. She asks for forgiveness, internally acknowledging that all of this is foreign and does not belong to her. Soleya feels disconnected from the real world, but accepts her insignificance. Despite everything, Soleya smiles and says that she doesn't believe in things like family. Her eyes are filled with a slight sadness, but in them you can read the reconciliation with herself. Silence falls over the estate. Soleya walks down the hall thinking about how her father was offended by her words about the worthlessness of the slave he bought. She blames herself for her bluntness. Soleya sees her father standing on the balcony, silently looking out at the garden. She senses his disappointment, but can't find the words to comfort him or make things right. She steps outside, enjoying the warm sunlight. The weather seems almost a mockery of her inner anxiety, but even in this she finds a little peace. Soleya looks at the situation in surprise, wondering why something is happening. Her maid explains with a smile that the lady has forgotten something again, accompanying her comments with a humorous but kind tone. Soleya's face shows confusion and indignation when she notices the strange behavior. The maid naively explains that the lady did not give any order, and that the reason was probably a simple expectation. Soleya is horrified to realize that someone was able to remain standing all night simply because she did not give any orders. Emotions overwhelm her, and she begins to search for explanations, a little stunned by what is happening. Rushing to check on the stranger, the girl finds him tired but motionless. She runs to him to see if he is okay, her actions tinged with worry and confusion. To her surprise, she realizes that the man's hands are chained. This causes Soleya to panic, and the situation takes an unexpected and dramatic turn. She is trying to figure out what happened. The man awkwardly explains that the keys to remove the shackles must be in the mistress's possession. Soleya reproaches him for not having informed her of this before. However, he decides to rectify the situation by remaining calm. Soleya tries to insert the key, but the process is not easy. She struggles with the lock, frustrated that she cannot help right away. Meanwhile, the man, embarrassed, tries to calm her down. Eventually, the situation begins to resolve itself, though complications with the locking mechanism delay them. In this context, the maid watches what is happening, believing that the lady is showing kindness and care. The man, freed from his chains, thanks Soleya for her efforts. They share a moment of understanding, and the girl continues to show concern, assuring him that she needs to rest. The situation ends with a warm scene where the maid lovingly observes the interaction between the mistress and the man. She admires Soleya and finds her kindness admirable. Soleya persistently tries to reason with her partner. demanding that she stop the meaningless conversations and concentrate on solving the problem, which becomes more and more threatening. She finds that her attempt to free the prisoner using the key fails. Frustration mounts, but she remains determined to find another way to help. The prisoner, seeing her confusion, tries to reassure her that she is not guilty. His gaze is filled with gratitude, but Soleya feels that her guilt is only increasing. Soleya suggests going back and looking for other tools for liberation. She also insistently tells the captive to straighten his clothes, showing concern. The man expresses his gratitude for her concern and calls her kind. Despite the situation, Soleya remains clear-headed and plans her next steps. Suddenly you remember important information from the list that could change the course of events. A new plan of action is forming in your head. Recalling the data about the prisoner, Soleya comes to the conclusion that there is something special about him, despite his physical injuries and fatigue. She decides to cut the chains and orders one of her companions to bring an axe, showing her determination. Soleya realizes that using an axe in her room is impossible. She moves the action outside to avoid causing damage and create a safe environment. The servant brings the axe and Soleya organizes the process. Her confidence and determination delight the captive, strengthening his faith in her abilities. Soleya hands the man something and tells him it is for his hands. The servant, hearing this, begins to panic, misinterpreting her intentions. The atmosphere becomes tense. The servant realizes that Soleya may be about to do something drastic. His thoughts are filled with anxiety, and he imagines dramatic scenes where someone's hands are cut off. The servant understands that the consequences of such actions could lead to serious conflicts. Panicking, he decides to tell Gray about this, hoping to avoid something irreparable. The running servant is overcome by a feeling of hopelessness. He calls on Gray to intervene and stop Soleya, fearing her actions. The servant finds Gray among the guests. His voice trembles as he apologizes for the intrusion. The situation escalates and everyone's attention is drawn to what is happening. Gray is shocked by the servant's words. He assures him that everything is fine and asks the servant to calmly explain what happened. However, the servant continues to look scared. Gray meets people who have attracted the servant's attention. These are ordinary servants, a gardener, a kitchen helper, and a messenger. The servant does not understand why they are there. Gray speculates that one of these people may have been involved in the problems with Soleya. His gaze turns cold and he begins to question them. The servants deny their guilt. They insist that they have never caused harm or shown aggression. Gray reflects on their words, trying to understand what happened. The atmosphere is tense, but Gray remains determined. He is going to find out the truth, even if it means exposing one of the servants. Anxiety lingers in the air. The young man gives a confusing excuse to his interlocutor, claiming that after working in the duchy, he returns home immediately. He insists that he would never dare to do anything illegal or immoral. Gray, stern and self-assured, accuses him of disrespect and inappropriate behavior. He reports that neighbors often hear strange noises coming from the man's home, including children crying and screaming, and questions his honesty. The maid is shocked to hear the accusations. She wonders how such a gentle and indecisive man, unable to say no, can be accused of violence. Her emotions highlight the gravity of the situation. The man's face changes at the accusations. He denies everything and asks suspiciously which of the neighbors could have said that. His gaze betrays anxiety and his voice becomes cold and tense. Gray, without losing his cool, reproaches the man for his insolence. His confidence and severity increase the tension, emphasizing the difference in status and position between the interlocutors. The man, on his knees, swears his innocence, saying that he always separates home and work. Gray sarcastically comments that the rumors about the domestic tyrant may be true and moves the conversation on to the next suspect. Gray moves on to the next man and accuses him of stealing the remaining alcohol from the kitchen. He stresses that he could have turned a blind eye, but the problem is that things have gone much further. Gray accuses a man of attacking a maid from another family. The accused defends himself by claiming that it all began with a misunderstanding in a store where he was trying to wait in line to get his place. Gray replies, based on eyewitness accounts, that the situation seemed different. The woman stood up first, but the man did not notice her. He stresses that such actions are unacceptable and ends the conflict. The third man, panicking, excuses himself, saying that he has no connection to the lady and does not understand why he was called. However, Gray, with his silence and attentive gaze, emphasizes that he does not believe him. Gray, pensive and a little gloomy, he recalls his secret encounters with Saleya. He describes her shyness and calls her Lay when they are alone. His thoughts are full of tenderness. He notices her embarrassment, which makes her even sweeter. Gray goes on to reflect on his affection for Saleya, comparing her to a ripe apple due to the blush on her cheeks. His tone hints at a deep emotional connection, with a hint of sadness and warmth. The servant timidly justifies himself to Gray, admitting his mistake. He claims to have admired Saleya from afar, finding her beautiful. His voice trembles with fear as he swears that he never touched her for fear of his master's wrath. Gray begins to laugh, his laugh soft but terrifying. He admits that he never thought such lowly servants could be found in his house, emphasizing his fury at the violation of boundaries while at the same time displaying cold cruelty. His eyes fill with rage as he coldly calls the servant a scum worthy of contempt. The atmosphere around him heats up, as if there is a threat hidden in his gaze, and his inner calm is slowly giving way to a storm. Gray ponders what to do about the current situation. His gaze turns to the old servant he trusts. He says that even if no one touched Soli, all the other abominations happening in his house cannot be ignored. The senior servant remembers that the new slave is also called Dawn, and smiling hints at a coincidence. However, he suddenly realizes that he has too much to do to deal with this story and quickly tries to leave. The situation becomes tense when the servant announces that the mistress is going to punish the slave, possibly by cutting off his hand. Desperate, he asks Gray to intervene and save his weak and fragile lover. Gray was stunned by what he heard. His face filled with rage, and he exclaimed, calling the culprit a bastard. His indignation reached its limit, and in his words you could hear the determination to restore order. Giving the order to his loyal man Morgan, Gray orders the culprit to be dealt with, cruelly punishing him for his betrayal and the undermined honor of the house. His voice is firm and his intentions ruthless, reflecting his desire to complete this story completely. Gray tests his inner resolve as he prepares to protect someone important to him. His intense gaze and the flashes of red light surrounding him emphasize his willingness to face the task alone, despite the possible consequences. An agitated Gray rushes down the long hallway filled with golden reflections, thinking of the injustice his friend or loved one faced. His steps reflect impatience and a desire to act immediately. He meets a girl who, despite her bright eyes and mischievous smile, seems to harbor pain. She teases him, trying to ease the tense atmosphere, but Gray remains focused on his goal. Gray sees a child with a blank, vacant stare. This image stirs anger and regret in him because he realizes that the child has become a victim of abuse. Gray decides not to stand by and help. The tension mounts as the girl's voice rises in front of him. She is clearly agitated, her face filled with anger and desperation. Gray realizes how important this situation is to her, and his resolve grows. Remembering his family connection, he firmly decides that he will not allow anyone to disturb his younger sister's peace. He reflects on his role as a protector and willing to take responsibility. Gray analyzes the girl's soft character and comes to the conclusion that she will not be able to achieve what she has planned. He is convinced that he must act in her place, despite her efforts to be strong. Running towards the scene, he notices that his sister is holding an axe in her hands. The atmosphere is tense, but Gray remains calm and quickly assesses the situation. Taking the axe, he firmly declares that he will face the difficult task alone. The girl is shocked, but Gray calmly assures her that everything is under control, showing concern and determination. In humorous style, their conversation ends with a joke. Gray warns his sister about possible splashes, which makes her smile. Despite the seriousness of the situation, he finds a way to support her. Gray ponders the possibility that the blood could be a sign of damage and wonders about the metal fragments. His calm gaze expresses reflection, and the words in the cloud enhance the sense of doubt and analysis of what is happening. A mysterious man in a purple cloak appears in front of Gray, emitting a sinister aura. His angry words indicate that he is seeking protection for someone close to him, and he seems to be quite determined. Gray, resolutely gripping his axe, prepares to cut the chain that accompanies one of the company members. His confidence is shaken a little when the situation does not go as planned, and the screams of fear increase the tension of the scene. Soleil, stunned by what is happening, screams loudly at Gray that he should have just cut the chain and not done anything careless. Her emotions are expressed in a loud scream, emphasizing the intensity and gravity of the situation. Screams, "Damn!" sound in the sky as an event reaches its climax. Visually, we see the little creature with a hat fly away, adding surprise and a touch of comedy to the scene. Gray looks at Soleil in confusion as she scolds him for trying to cut off the stranger's hands. Her outrage makes the moment comically dramatic, and Gray clearly doesn't understand what happened. Embarrassed, Gray apologizes to Soleil, but she reminds him of the key that could solve the problem without the axe. In the background, a man examines his hands, surprised that they are still intact. Soleil eventually explains that the key was broken, so she tried an alternative method. Gray jokes in relief that everything is fine now, but is still a little embarrassed. Gray extends his hand to the stranger, offering to help him up. The man thanks him, though he apologizes for scaring everyone with his appearance and behavior. The atmosphere shifts to light comedy when Gray notices that the stranger is not wearing pants. Against a background of floral motifs, the character's emotions alternate between surprise and confusion, ending the scene on a cheerful note. Gray, looking confused, tries to explain the situation to Soleil, but she seems extremely indignant. Gray's embarrassment only increases when she abruptly points out his appearance, clearly implying that he is in an awkward situation. The atmosphere between them becomes tense, but the irony does not disappear. Soleil justifies her actions, but Gray is dissatisfied, believing that her actions could have been more consistent. He is clearly uncomfortable, and his smile only increases his embarrassment. An emotional exchange begins between them, full of energy and hidden humor. At that moment, another girl appears who calmly suggests leaving everything as it is. Her calmness contrasts with the heated emotions of Soleil and Gray. The proposal leaves them both stunned, and Gray's bewilderment reaches its peak, adding to the comic tone of the scene. Gray tries to understand the absurdity of what is happening, his face reflecting complete inner chaos. Soleil easily gets out of the situation by justifying the actions of another character with family difficulties. She gently takes Gray by the shoulder, urging him to move on, as if she wants to close the matter. It's clear that Soleil doesn't take the situation seriously. Her gaze betrays hidden thought as she advises Gray to change his approach and stop making life difficult for her. Her cheerfulness eases the tension, but Gray is still clearly uneasy and trying to process her words. The camera moves to a general view of her house. Soleil's internal monologue sounds reflective. She reflects on the strange dynamics of her family, which, despite everything, is becoming stronger. At the same time, the surroundings demonstrate the comfort and warmth of the surrounding environment. Later, at home, Soleil enthusiastically begins an endurance exercise, trying to maintain perfect posture. Her efforts are obvious, but the tension and desperation gradually increase. Her determination inspires respect, even if the effort seems a little ridiculous. Gray closely observes her actions, morally supporting her and telling her about her attempts. His presence helps her overcome difficulties. Soleil is completely focused, trying to achieve her goal. A light but touching support emerges between them. Soleil finally achieves her goal with an impressive performance. She falls exhausted, but seems satisfied with her achievements. Gray, reassured by her success, thanks her for her efforts. There is a warmth between them that confirms their closeness. The atmosphere is bright and festive again. Those around her are genuinely happy about Soleil's success. Gray looks at her with a slight smile, showing his pride and admiration. Their family is really growing and getting stronger, despite all the oddities and obstacles. The young girl found herself in an awkward situation, and her actions raised questions among those around her. One of the characters, Gray, wonders why she pursued her dream in that way. The girl is in a state of confusion, which conveys her inner experiences. Gray and the girl find common ground and seem to support each other. Their interaction is full of sincerity and warmth. This moment shows that even in difficult situations, support and encouragement can be found. For the first time, Gray realizes that his efforts are making a difference. He looks at his hands soulfully, reflecting on the meaning of his actions. This awakens in him a sense of worth and strengthens his resolve. The girl enjoys the moment, feeling calm. Her thoughts suggest that it is better to act than to remain inactive. She decides that Gray should continue training, as this is an important step towards their mutual success. The girl notices changes in her body, probably the result of regular training. She looks at her muscles with admiration, realizing that the progress has been a pleasant surprise for her. This inspires her to keep going. His determination grows and he prepares to take another step. A tool appears in his hands, symbolizing his desire to face the task despite the difficulties. His inner fire burns ever brighter. She is confident in her abilities and will complete what she started no matter what. The girl radiates confidence, knowing that she is facing an important test, but she is willing to overcome all obstacles. Approaching the goal, the girl almost achieves the desired result. She is focused and calm, aware of how close she is to achieving a breakthrough. This is the moment of maximum tension. Her strength begins to falter. She feels tiredness taking hold of her. It is doubtful, but her amulet reminds her of her goal. She struggles with herself to find hidden reserves of energy. Despite her exhaustion, she keeps trying, determined not to give up. Her gaze is filled with determination, and her inner monologue strengthens her will. This moment highlights her resilience and determination. Soleil, hanging upside down, mentally encouraged herself, preparing for the important step. She imagined returning home with a large sum of money and reassured herself that she could do it. Her determination shone in her eyes, full of hope. She performed some action related to the book and, looking at the result, happily stated that her idea worked. A quiet "it worked" rang in the air as the magic or technique began to work as she had planned. Inspired, Soleil pondered the theory, which was eventually confirmed. She realized that with the help of the book she could return home if her plans came true. The prospect of achieving her dream gave her strength. Dreaming of the future, she imagined how she would pay off her debts, buy a cozy house in the village and live like an ordinary person, enjoying all the benefits of the modern world. These thoughts caused a storm of joy in her, but he also considered the practicalities. Buying a car involves taxes, so he decided to rent one. As he imagined his vacation, he thought about who he would travel with and the people who would make the trip more fun. His choice fell on Gray, even though he often complains. On the road, the driving was tense, and Gray warned Soleil to drive carefully, especially in the corners. Despite her comments, Soleil remained in her style, causing Gray to grab his head. He irritably asked her how long she planned to drive so recklessly, prompting her to smile and offer a mild apology. Soleil laughed, imagining how her brother would complain about Gray when he found out about her adventures. She thought how funny and ironic the situation was and was glad she could control it. Suddenly his mood changed as he remembered the house that seemed strange to him. He realized that he did not belong there and that this family was not his, which caused him sadness and a little remorse. Looking at the bright flowers, he mentally addressed Soleil, apologizing for his doubts. She realized that her own brightness and meaning were not strong enough, but this was no reason to give up, because her path was just beginning. Soleil sits pensive on the bed, surrounded by a gloomy atmosphere. She reflects on her single life, realizing that even if she returns, nothing will change and she will be alone again. Her thoughts are tinged with sadness and alienation. However, a moment later she finds herself thinking that she had always been alone, and that suited her. A slight smile lights up her face as she tries to convince herself that solitude is her choice, her normal state. But deep down she is still tormented by doubts. Her thoughts become deeper as she thinks back to the past. She once thought that being alone was ideal, but now, after what she's been through, she feels a strange desire to experience the warmth of family again, even if it seems impossible. She clutches the locket in her hand, lost in her memories. This object seems to her to be something that reminds her of the past and helps her maintain a fragile sense of connection to something important. She decides to hide her inner fears and live as if everything is fine. Gathering her strength, Soleya gets on her knees and reassures herself that everything is okay. She tries to gain confidence to move forward despite her inner experiences and fears. She decides to distract herself from her thoughts, leaves the room, and declares that she wants to eat. Soleya is on a quest to find something that can bring her back to a sense of normality. Her steps are sure and her voice firm. In the dining room, she meets Gray, who is quietly eating dinner. She asks him why he is alone and learns that her father is busy with his business and that the other members of the family are preparing for an evening event. This explains the quiet atmosphere that reigns in the house. Gray mentions an upcoming party and adds that Soleya is also invited. This suddenly embarrasses her. The thought of such an event makes her hesitate, and she begins to imagine herself at a ball in luxurious dresses. Soleya is shocked and anxious as she tries to figure out how to deal with this challenge. Dancing, fancy clothes, all of this seems unusual and scary to her. She's not sure she's ready for something like this. Meanwhile, Gray calmly finishes dinner, gently confirming his participation in the party. His confident attitude makes Soleya feel a little irritated, but he also supports her, letting her know that she has the ability to deal with this. Gray, with a charming smile, offers Soleya to choose a luxurious dress, wanting to cheer her up. His voice is full of concern, and his light tone hints at a hidden agenda. He tries to support the girl, who is clearly taken by surprise by such a proposal. Soleya is shocked by the unexpected turn of events. Her confused look expresses the question of why Gray decided to do this now. She thinks about how little she has had to do to have fun lately and wonders where he wants to take her. Gray explains that the occasion is very special. It is a ball in honor of the princess's birthday. Her steps are sure and she walks with determination towards her goal, making it clear that her presence at this event matters. Suddenly, another young man, elegantly dressed, appears and announces that the Virgo family is also invited to the ball. He adds that if Soleya does not want to go, it is her choice. Her calmness and goodwill provoke mixed feelings in him. Gray reminds Soleya of her father's concerns. He worries that the girl has lost her friends and spends all her time at home. Gray gently hints that the dance is an opportunity not only to relax, but also to make new friends. Soleya reacts thoughtfully to Gray's words. Her gaze turns serious, wondering if this is a hidden offer to push her into finding a boyfriend. She is afraid of being exposed and is wary of ulterior motives. Her thoughts are filled with anxiety. She clasps her hands tightly together, thinking that Gray might be worried about her, but she can't shake the feeling that his intentions aren't entirely clear. This sparks her inner conflict. Soleya is lost in her thoughts. She thinks about how important it is not to miss the opportunity to find out what is behind her brother's actions. She decides to trust in fate and prepares for the event, hoping to understand what he is planning. Gray extends his hand and smiles warmly. He reminds her that she hasn't left the house for a long time and suggests that she at least enjoy the holiday once. His gesture is sincere, but Soleya is still unsure whether to trust him. Soleya takes one last look at Gray, her eyes full of questions. She wonders why she was given that role and what is behind his attention. The decision to go to the ball is made with a hint of doubt and hope in her heart. The gray-haired man wondered what happened to Soleya. Did memory loss make her withdraw, or did he disturb her in some way? Anxiety haunted him. He remembered her former spontaneity. The image of Soleya appeared before his eyes. Sweet and happy, she had never behaved so strangely before. The changes in her behavior were alarming and reminded him how much she had changed. A man in a business suit reflects on the fact that the distance between him and Soleya has become greater than expected. However, he notices that she is recovering and becoming more active, and he realizes that he needs to be more positive. Gray and Herman extend their hands towards Soleya, offering her their choice. Gray's sincere smile and Herman's determined gaze underline their intention. The soft light surrounding them creates an atmosphere of magic. Soleya finds herself in a dilemma as to which hand to take. Her confusion is reflected in the large question mark in her eyes. The unexpectedness of what is happening leaves her frozen for a moment. Gray jokingly says that his hand is bigger and that it should be more comfortable for her to hold it. Herman, dissatisfied with this, with a serious face claims otherwise. Their argument fills the atmosphere with light comedy. Soleya ponders, trying to make a decision, but suddenly a strange young man intervenes, shouting loudly that she must take both hands. His intervention adds a sense of surprise to the scene. After weighing everything up, Soleya makes a decision and takes both hands, causing surprise and slight confusion in the men. She seems confident, knowing that this is her way of reconciling both parties. She steps outside to see the magnificent building bathed in the golden glow of the sunset. Her long red hair blows in the wind, and her eyes reflect admiration. Gray and Herman begin to discuss a trivial matter related to time and their father. Soleya listens to them in bewilderment, not understanding why they are interested in such things. The atmosphere seems both serious and comical. Guests arriving at the luxurious salon are greeted by the elegant Marielle. She greets Gray, Herman, and Soleya, emphasizing their status. An atmosphere of warmth and goodwill will envelop the characters, setting the mood for an exquisite choice of outfits. Marielle, the owner of the salon, demonstrates her professional knowledge. She made magnificent dresses, impressing Soleya with her sophistication and her sensitive approach to preferences. Gray gallantly expresses his confidence in Marielle, charging her to turn his sister into a true lady. His charm captivates everyone around him, including the embarrassed Soleya, who is surprised by his magnetic voice. Soleya can't help but feel a little emotional as she watches Gray's gallantry. Her thoughts mix with admiration and surprise, creating a moment filled with genuine emotion. Marielle invites the guests to wait a bit while she prepares their outfits. Gray, relaxed, lies down on the sofa, and Soleya excitedly discusses the situation with Herman, sensing the anxiety of the upcoming test. One of the dresses catches Soleya's eye. The delicate embellishments, the luxurious fabrics, and the floral motifs on the bodice are a delight. Her face lights up in wonder at the beauty of what she sees. Soleya is emotionally enchanted by what she saw. She cannot hide her surprise at the luxury of the dress, realizing the exquisite style she is about to try on. Marielle asks if Soleya has any design preferences, but she shyly denies, leaving the choice to the owner. The elegant Marielle leads the process with confidence, adding tranquility to the atmosphere. The atmosphere in the living room is filled with a slight tension, as if everything around them emphasizes the importance of the moment. Soleya reflects on her discomfort and fears accidentally disturbing the luxurious order of the room. The test begins. Marielle confidently helps Soleya, reassuring her with soft words. The girl lets herself be carried away by the feeling of trust and prepares to fully immerse herself in the process, feeling special. Marielle, whose gaze seems cold, notices that her interlocutor seems too thin. This creates a tense atmosphere in which emotions are hidden behind an exterior calm, increasing the mystery of the situation. Soleya discusses with Marielle the choice of fabric for the clothes. A little embarrassed, she confides her tastes to Marielle, who praises her preferences. Time is short, so the selection process is sped up, which adds a bit of a comic element. Soleya feels uncomfortable with the situation, she admits to herself. Her indecision adds to the atmosphere, and readers begin to empathize more with her internal experiences. When Soleya appears in a luxurious dress, the atmosphere is filled with light. She looks stunning, and her outfit is admirable. The audience holds its breath, anticipating the reaction of those around her to her new image. Gray and Herman seem shocked to see Soleya. Their silence highlights the emotional contrast between the luxurious beauty of the dress and their inability to find the words to praise her. After silent admiration, Herman suddenly decides, tuxedos. His abrupt response is a little comical and highlights how he is trying to hide his excitement. Gray greets Soleya, trying to be polite. However, his playful comment about her clumsiness causes a slight tension, which soon turns to laughter when she calls herself not a weirdo, but Gray. Soleya teases Gray by asking him to accompany her to the dance. Their light banter shows off their friendly dynamic and gives the scene a light, casual feel. Marielle intervenes abruptly, trying to prevent Soleya from making unexpected decisions. Her emotional reaction increases the tension, contrasting with the light atmosphere of the previous scene. The final scene shows Marielle being dragged away by Soleya, concerned about her actions. The comedic style emphasizes their relationship, adding dynamics and ending the series on a lighthearted note. Soleil, in a sparkling dress, runs down the hall holding Marielle's hand. She rushes off, begging forgiveness from those around her and dragging the maid with her. Gray, observing this scene, is surprised, but restrains his comments, limiting himself to raising an eyebrow questioningly. Suddenly, Soleil finds herself in the locker room. She is stunned and confused by what is happening. The maid insistently asks her to wait a minute, preparing for something important. In another room, Gray and Herman are talking. Herman asks where Soleil is, and Gray notes with a smile that the girl has gone through a transformation again. He mentions that Soleil's dress needs urgent replacement. Herman wonders if Soleil's new dress suits her, but suggests that there are even better options. Gray reminds him that the dress was her gift, insisting that she did everything perfectly. Meanwhile, the argument continues, adding a slight note of rivalry. The maid brings Soleil a new dress and asks her to try it on. Soleil reluctantly agrees, still not understanding the reason for such a commotion. She looks at the dress she brought, unsure if it will fit her. After trying on the dress, Soleil looks in the mirror and realizes that it looks too simple. She doubts that this outfit suits her and scolds herself internally for being too thin and elegant, which, in her opinion, does not make her image expressive. Soleil experiences inner discomfort, imagining how others might laugh at her. She is afraid of hearing criticism about her figure and sees a caricatured version of herself in the mirror, drowning in thoughts of criticism and ridicule. Memories overwhelm Soleil, reminding her of unpleasant moments from the past. She expects to hear again the caustic comments that have haunted her for so long, leaving a deep mark on her soul. Soleil tries to explain to the maid that the dress doesn't suit her, but she insists that she try on another outfit over it. There is hope in her eyes that this will save the situation and give the girl confidence. The maid excitedly shows off many details of her new outfit, assuring that everything will be perfect. She quickly adds the finishing touches to create an elegant look. Soleil, having relaxed a bit, begins to believe that everything can really turn out well. Soleil looks at her reflection in the mirror with surprise, her gaze filled with excitement. Her bright violet eyes betray an internal struggle. She realizes that an important step awaits her. Her fear is mixed with the hope that her outward appearance can express her true essence. At the entrance to the luxurious hall, Mariel calmly declares that everything is ready. Gray and Herman look at the door with restraint, waiting for Soleil to appear. The atmosphere in the room seems tense, foreshadowing something significant, as if time has stopped awaiting her arrival. Gray, seeing Soleil, cannot contain his astonishment. His face reflects both admiration and shock as he covers his mouth with his hand. His eyes shine with tenderness and regret, because he realizes how much the girl has changed. Emotions overwhelm him, and he feels lost. Soleil emerges with a newfound confidence. The light falls softly on her face, creating a halo around her. Marielle looks at her in admiration, but Soleil's voice sounds doubtful. She wonders if she is doing the right thing and feels the attention surrounding her. Gray admits that he doesn't see her as a sister, but as a completely different person. Before him stands a real lady, one who exudes grace and beauty. Her words are filled with deep sincerity, but are tinged with the bitterness of losing someone who was once his close relative. Soleil, dressed in a luxurious dress, smiles, but still doubts how true she is to herself. She is determined to move forward, but her questions remain unanswered. Marielle points out that nothing could highlight her beauty better than this outfit. Gray, moved by a sudden impulse, offers his watch to Marielle. His gesture symbolizes an attempt to atone for some guilt, but she refuses in a panic. Her indignation reflects a fear of accepting something too significant, but she persists. Herman, stepping in, easily pays for the dress. He is dispassionate, but his actions speak of care and nobility. Marielle is stunned, as Gray's proposal only increases the drama of the situation. A tense dialogue ensues between them. Soleil gently criticizes Herman for his excessive generosity, pointing out that he spends too much for her. His gaze remains serious, but he is clearly at a loss for her arguments. He seems vulnerable, but determined to help. Soleil, despite her worries, thanks Herman. Her gaze becomes more confident, but inside there is still uncertainty. A moment of sincerity and warmth is created between them, reflecting their closeness. Her smile becomes a symbol of acceptance. Herman gently reprimands Soleya, touching her face, which makes her think about his expression. She is indignant, but beneath his playful words is concern, reminding her to act confident in front of others. Herman, with a soft smile, adds a comment about her jewelry, pointing out the mismatch between the brooch and the dress. His subtle innuendo speaks of his desire to help her look impeccable. Gray, Herman, and Soleya are together as a family, getting ready to go out. They put on their brooches, which symbolize their belonging to the family. It is a symbolic moment that shows their unity. Soleya feels the thrill of being appreciated when she looks at her family. She remembers her belonging to a family, feeling at the same time joy and a little sadness for the doubts of the past. The Trinity walks towards the grand doors, behind which an important ball awaits them. Soleya feels nervous but tries to hide it, imagining it as an exciting journey through the palace. Arriving at the ball, they attract the attention of the guests. Rumors about Soleya spread throughout the hall. Many are shocked by her appearance, considering her sickly and weak. The atmosphere becomes tense. Hearing unflattering comments about herself, Soleya maintains her composure, even though she is seething inside. She sarcastically tells herself that she hears everything, but this only strengthens her resolve to show her strength. Gray jokes, pointing out that her appearance matches her outfit perfectly, though there is an encouraging note hidden in his words. Despite his joking tone, his support is important to her. All attention is focused on Soleya, Herman, and Gray. They take confident steps, demonstrating the unity and strength of their family, which makes those around them reconsider their opinion of the Virgo heiress. A woman in a sparkling dress enters a spacious hall with a staircase filled with soft light. Her appearance leaves a deep impression. Gray watches intently. Herman remains silent, and Soleya gazes in amazement at the dazzling figure, radiating light and grace, like the embodiment of perfection. Her movements are soft and elegant, each step accompanied by the sparkle of the jewels and the soft light. Soleya's gaze is drawn to the delicate necklace, complemented by the finest details. The halo of light that frames the woman seems to make her part of something supernatural and enchanting. The woman addresses the audience with a warm greeting, naming Gray and Herman, then pauses curiously at Soleya. There is a softness and kindness in her voice, which brings a slight smile to Herman's face and tension to Gray's. Soleya responds calmly, maintaining her dignity. Gray, Herman, and Soleya bow their heads in respect and congratulate the woman on her birthday. At this point, each expresses their emotions in their own way. Soleya maintains a cool reserve. Herman adds a gallant gesture, and Gray, tense, barely bows formally. A woman approaches Soleya with a question about her health. Soleya, a little embarrassed, thanks her for the concern, assuring her that she is already feeling better. This moment catches Aaron's attention, who steps forward and introduces himself with a kind smile and a warm look, clearly trying to create a light atmosphere. Aaron, with a casual smile, introduces himself as Aaron Bailey of Guernois. His friendly demeanor is endearing, but Soleya is reluctant to reveal his emotions. He notices Gray watching the proceedings with visible caution, as if trying to understand his brother's intentions. The contrast between the brothers becomes especially clear. Gray remains strict and cold, while Aaron tries to be casual and charming. Soleya is surprised by how different they are, not only externally, but also internally. This makes her wonder about the hidden tensions between them. Aaron, trying to shorten the distance, suggests that Soleya simply call him by his name. She, sticking to formalities, politely declines, causing him slight disappointment. However, she quickly regains her usual cheerfulness, not allowing Soleya to sense her confusion. Gray turns his attention to Aaron, reminding him of their last meeting at Orselvina's party. This creates a hidden tension between them, which Soleya senses but decides not to interfere with. Aaron, keeping a relaxed attitude, tries not to show his emotions and remains polite. In an attempt to lighten the mood, Aaron asks Soleya about her debut dance. She calmly replies that she is past that age and doesn't see the point of the dance. Her disappointment is evident in her eyes, but she keeps smiling, not allowing tension to fill the atmosphere again. At a lavish reception, Aaron, distinguished by his elegance and manners, demonstrates kindness, offering those gathered the idea of spending time in society. Soleya, touched by the attention, responds with respect. Their conversation attracts the attention of those around them, including Gray, whose gaze becomes increasingly focused. Soleya watches Aaron as he walks away, but Gray doesn't like her manner. She gently reassures him, reminding him of the importance of moderation in his words. Gray, however, only contains his emotions outwardly. His criticisms ring out even in his silence. Gray can't help but think out loud that Aaron has always been like this, confident, but somehow annoying. Soleya tries to justify Aaron, pointing out that he's kind, but the tension between them increases noticeably. Gray feels misunderstood but remains silent. Sitting in solitude, Gray reflects on Aaron's role in his society. Despite his manners, he believes they all serve the same purpose, the prosperity of the empire. He notes that Aaron's pride and manners seem excessive, but he hides his true feelings beneath a calm exterior. Aaron emerges from a different background, radiating confidence and strength. His mysterious gaze is hidden behind an elaborately decorated fan, as if he is toying with those who look upon him. Gray sees him as a hidden threat to the duchy, but chooses not to bring it up. Gray assumes that Aaron only communicates with them for the sake of appearances, considering them inferior to him. He is sure that Aaron is ashamed of having such allies, but at the same time he believes that he cannot completely ignore them due to his position in society. Soleya reflects on how people might see her family as unnecessary in this world. This thought eats away at her inside. She wonders why it is so important to live up to expectations and doesn't understand why she is so afraid of others' scorn. Aaron finds Soleya away from the guests. He shows kindness and concern by suggesting she take a short walk to relieve the stress of the first dance. His soft words make her feel uncomfortable, but she doesn't want to seem ungrateful. Gray intervenes in the conversation, reminding him that he is responsible for Soleya's safety. His intentions are honest, but his abruptness betrays hidden emotions. There is a tension between him and Aaron that is increasingly felt in their tone and glances. Aaron coldly thwarts Gray's attempts to intervene, declaring that it is a matter of aristocracy. His expression grows more severe, showing that he has no intention of giving in. Soleya finds herself caught between two strong personalities and does not know how to resolve the conflict. Soleya looks at Aaron tensely, not hiding her irritation. She notices his condescending behavior and wonders if Gray really isn't from a noble family, since Aaron allows himself to speak to her so insolently. Her discontent grows and her facial expression becomes increasingly cold. Aaron, smiling arrogantly, intervenes in the conversation. He claims that he has something to discuss with the Virgo heiress and suggests to Gray that he should step aside. His tone clearly irritates Soleya, and his insolence only increases the tension between the interlocutors. Aaron approaches Soleya and smugly claims that they could be good friends. He finds her behavior unbearably brazen and reacts with detachment and visible disgust. This moment increases his inner irritation. Soleya feels sickened by Aaron's unexpected closeness. She cannot hide her disgust and realizes that the physical reaction is due to his abrupt interference. She clearly feels that such behavior only provokes internal protest in her. Gray sees how badly Soleya behaves towards Aaron and tries to support her. His care and gentleness give her some peace, and the tense posture begins to relax. At that moment, she feels that Gray is the only one who sincerely cares about her condition. Aaron notices Soleya's reaction and mockingly asks her if she really thinks he's disgusting. Her words sound like a jab at his pride, but his face maintains the appearance of imperturbability. In fact, anger is boiling inside him. Aaron tries to justify his clumsiness by blaming his weak body. However, his words ring hollow and his tone reinforces the impression that he is just trying to hide his feelings of humiliation. This scene makes his image even more pitiful in the eyes of others. Soleya coldly hints that nausea only occurs around Aaron. These words hurt him and make him lose confidence in himself. At this point, the heiress intervenes in the discussion, and her authoritarian tone adds tension to the conversation. The Virgo heiress calmly but wittily points out Aaron's suspicious behavior by asking him provocative questions. His face betrays confusion, and his attempts to justify himself sound unconvincing. This scene undermines his usual complacency. In conclusion, the heiress concludes that Aaron has spies in the Duchy of Virgo. Her words shock him, and he loses control of his emotions. Soleya observes everything with a cold smile, feeling an inner satisfaction for her loss in this verbal duel. At the ball, Soleya meets Aaron, who exudes calm and confidence. His words about apologizing for any inconvenience he may cause sound deliberately polite, but Soleya senses an underlying meaning. His reply is soft and evasive, but the tension between them grows. Aaron suggests taking a short break, which heightens the atmosphere of hidden intrigue. Aaron, flanked by Herman and Gray, reminds them of the importance of caution, emphasizing that rumors can be dangerous. His calm speech hides a subtle hint of control and surveillance. Herman and Gray accept his words with a certain degree of tense agreement, realizing the need to be on guard. Soleya loses her patience and angrily pushes Aaron against the wall, accusing him of belittling her status and hospitality. Her decisive words break the fragile balance of their relationship. Aaron remains apparently calm, but his gaze becomes cold and distant. Aaron abruptly cuts off the accusations and warns Soleya not to mock his mother. There is anger in his words, but he calmly explains his behavior as an attempt to please the emperor. In response, Soleya glares at him defiantly, heightening the tension of the moment. Soleya decides to step aside next to Herman, making a sarcastic comment about his weakness. Aaron stays back, allowing himself to relax for a moment. He is pleased to realize that he resisted his fit of rage by maintaining his dignity, but the aftertaste of their dialogue remains. Herman, finding himself alone with Soleya, admits that the princess scares him a little. His tension is transmitted to Gray, who tries to distance himself. The mutual distrust between them continues to grow, creating the ground for new conflicts. Soleya, accompanied by the princess, enters a spacious room where their conversation becomes more personal. The princess, with icy calm, points out the importance of presenting herself in person. Soleya feels cornered under her dominant gaze. The princess majestically pronounces her full name and adds that she can be called Kracha. Soleya tries to remain calm, although inside everything is tense with fear. The princess does not allow her to back down, emphasizing her superiority. Soleya tries to cope with the overwhelming emotions, but the princess's piercing gaze seems to paralyze her. Every word Krachi says impresses upon her that she must submit completely. A sense of tense anticipation grows in the room. The princess ends the conversation with an unexpected declaration about her desire to possess Soleya. Her words sound gentle, but there is a threat hidden in them. Soleya senses the conflict reaching its climax and realizes that she is now completely dependent on Krachi's will. At the ball, surrounded by light and flowers, a mysterious woman with golden hair proposes a deal. She promises Soleya, a girl with red hair and purple eyes, great power if she agrees to be her sword. The words sound convincing, but they contain a hidden danger that Soleya senses. Soleya, surprised by the offer, tries to keep her composure, but her nervousness betrays her confusion. She is not used to this type of situation, and the woman's tone and persistence make her suspicious. The internal tension is growing, and she understands that there will be no easy way out of the conversation. The woman continues to persuade, speaking of the prospects that will open up for Soleya. She mentions the title of Duchess and promises her a power she has never had before. The atmosphere heats up and the offer becomes more and more tempting, but Soleya remains on the alert. Soleya firmly rejects the offer, making it clear that she is not interested. Her calm, easy smile hides the tension, but inwardly she is preparing for the fact that the woman will not back down. Her refusal is a challenge that only makes the situation worse. Soleya notes that the Duke's health is fine and that it is too early to talk about the legacy. She skillfully avoids direct conflict, trying to maintain her position. The woman continues to press, but Soleya finds the words to keep the situation under control. Realizing that the conversation is reaching a dead end, Soleya decides to leave. She pretends not to have heard the woman's latest advances, but the tension in the air remains. As she leaves, she feels the penetrating gaze of her interlocutor and realizes that their confrontation will not end there. The woman hints at Soleya's friendship with the Duke's sons and emphasizes her influence. Her words get to the heart of the matter and force Soleya to wonder about hidden motives. The atmosphere becomes increasingly tense, and Soleya begins to experience an internal conflict. The woman promises to protect the Duke's children from prejudices due to their past if Soleya agrees to cooperate. Her promises sound sincere, but Soleya understands that there is manipulation behind them. She feels increasingly vulnerable. The memory of Herman, who was watching her with a slight smile, makes Soli feel a little sad. He was important to her, but his mocking nature and distance did not allow them to get closer. These images transport her to the past, but she tries not to get stuck in them. Soleya remembers Gray, with whom she had a closer relationship. However, she realizes that their paths have separated, despite the warmth he gave her. Her memories of him are full of tenderness and regret, but the present demands new decisions from her and a total acceptance of her destiny. The Duke, full of affection and warmth, tries to support Soleya, but his gaze remains distant. She sadly realizes that despite her kindness, she is not the person he would want around. This moment highlights once again her internal gap between the desire for love and the feeling of alienation. Soleya watches the joyful family members laughing together. Their sincere smiles make her feel out of place. She bitterly reflects on the fact that she was never a part of their world, of their happiness, and this painful realization brings about a new round of loneliness. She convinces herself that the princess's words of support cannot harm her. However, deep down she feels a strange and confusing feeling that does not leave her. It becomes a mystery to her that she is not yet ready to solve. Her thoughts return to the feeling of alienation, but a sudden pain in her chest breaks her composure. She realizes that her emotions are stronger than she expected, and trying to ignore them only increases her internal suffering. An inner voice tells him that the proposed conditions could turn into the realization of his dream. His heart is full of contradictions because he understands that this path can give him what he always dreamed of, but it requires a great sacrifice. Dark memories invade her like a black whirlwind. She remembers the trials and rumors that haunted her in the past. These poisonous words tear her apart, not allowing her to forget the pain she tried to bury deep in her heart. In her head, there is a firm promise to protect those around her. She is determined not to let anyone look down on them or belittle them because of their past. This promise becomes a point of support for her, giving her strength to face difficulties. Her dream of another life, full of happiness and acceptance, remains distant. She realizes that the person she despised most about her past was herself. This bitter realization forces her to confront her own insecurities and a deeply hidden pain. Soleya proudly declines the offer of help, trying hard to maintain her independence. Despite her firmness, she feels a slight tinge of gratitude for the other person's sincere concern. This moment gives her the opportunity to feel the warmth she has been deprived of for so long. As she leaves the room, she modestly thanks him for the invitation, trying to hide her emotions behind a cold tone. Her heart tightens with a dull thud of pain, but she does not allow herself to show weakness. His departure becomes a symbol of her attempt to maintain her dignity despite the feelings that burn within her. The lady of the House of Virgo appears before us as a strong and graceful person. Her calm gaze personifies confidence. The aura of beauty and strength that hovers around her is fascinating and emphasizes not only her influence but also her inner resilience. She inspires respect even in those who did not expect it from her. A mysterious figure dressed in a dark robe is holding a magical artifact that emits purple light. The wizard tries to find Lady Virgo's weak point, but without success. His words sound cold, but inside he feels uneasy. The tension between them is growing, as if something fatal is about to happen. The wizard concentrates on his artifact, but finds no signs of weakness in Lady Virgo. His face expresses shock and confusion, because his power, which seemed absolute, is useless. Lady Virgo remains impassive, and her mystery only increases his panic. Finally, the magician realizes with horror that the magical recording he tried to use is completely powerless against her. He is at a loss. His inner monologue is full of fear and bewilderment. Where is this mysterious lady? She seemed to disappear from his field of perception.